how those drafts look. And we saw a little bit of Lorelei. What are we expecting to see coming out today is Churnwalker consistently being a top ban across the board.
Yeah, at least in Europe it has been. It hasn't really been seen as much on the table in North America, but I think the Blackfeather and Rona is going to be another one that gets heavily prioritized. A Celeste ban from Queso is very interesting coming into this one because I think we saw Celeste once yesterday, and it did look strong, but it's not something that we've really been seeing teams put that heavy priority on.
Lyra, though, has been hugely prioritized across the course of the challenge battles so far. Has been often the second pick coming on through, but Fortress as well. This is something that we've seen sneaking on in. We've not seen a huge amount of Fortress. However, specifically going against that Lyra, we've seen a couple of Fortress captains locked on in, and often with a Vox.
Yeah, usually paired with a Vox so that you can get those mortal wounds and the bleed stacks procced as quickly as possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is where Queso do decide to try and go with this. You want to be able to have someone who has that high attack speed and the freedom to be able to throw out a lot of damage. Although the Sky ban, we talked about this yesterday, it leads to Rona picks. And so Calamity Reborn, you almost feel like they have to ban the Rona. But if they then ban the Rona, it opens up the opportunity for Queso to grab themselves a Blackfeather pick instead. So it's definitely going to be interesting. They do ban away the Reza, so I would be shocked if Queso do not go for a Rona pick after making that ban selection.
Yeah, I like the situation that Queso have set themselves up for there. They can't really lose no matter what was banned there. They've set themselves up for success. And the Rona does come on through. And also, the Fortress is still a pick that can be flexed both to the jungle and to the captain. So they haven't even given away their entire playbook just yet. We'll see what Calamity are going to do to try and answer this one. I mean, how do you draft now against the likes of a Rona and a Fortress? You have to assume they're going to be pretty aggressive.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to round out this composition for Calamity because you need to figure out something that can deal with this Rona. And the only something that's close to an answer to the Rona has been that Sky. And the fact that that was banned away, again, I think it was a big mistake by Calamity to not ban away the Rona in response. Vox will come out. That's one of the things that a lot of teams have tried to pick up to go up against the Rona just because you can sort of kite her out a little bit better than most other heroes. It also denies even though it wasn't likely with the Rona pick there, it denies a potential Vox Fortress comp. So Calamity, the Vox works here, but they still need something that can actually contend with the Rona in a one-on-one situation. And I just don't know what the answer actually is. Maybe they go for a Krull. It's kind of a very typical composition on this update. But they are going to go for the Rhyme instead, which the goal here is going to be to try and win that jungle matchup early.
Absolutely. Things like the Krull, though, do win against the Rhyme in the jungle. It would mean that we have double weapon power coming out from Queso, but we've seen double weapon power compositions coming on through, so potentially an option. I wouldn't be surprised to see something a little bit safer coming out though, but it's difficult to say. Queso, you've cast them quite a few times in the VGL. What are you expecting? What are comfort picks coming out for them?
I mean, their comfort picks have definitely changed and evolved with the update. Blackfeather was always one they used to play a lot of, but the fact that they've adapted to the Rona is now very strong. The Rhyme was one that they, Dark Ghost used to take into the jungle fairly frequently, but they are going to go back to the Blackfeather regardless. And make this a very likely to be the Crystal Blackfeather to try and just have that poke and range advantage against a Rhyme. But this is a matchup where, assuming that is where they go with it, the Rhyme should be able to control the jungle. But then it's just a matter of can they actually convert that into enough of an advantage to make sure that this Rona doesn't take over the game.
Yeah, that's going to be the question is once we get to those later game team fights is, both of these teams kind of want to ramp up, honestly, towards those fights, and we'll see a lot of stacking on the Rona, a lot of stacking on the Vox, and kind of who will survive long enough to be able to get that damage out and be able to get the first kill in those fights. And I'm excited to see those late game team fights. How are you expecting this one to pan out?
Like I said, I think the Rhyme should definitely be the aggressor early on, assuming it's a Crystal Blackfeather, and just try and take away as much of the jungle as possible, and then convert that into the lane, put pressure on the turrets. You don't necessarily have to kill the Rona, you don't necessarily have to prevent her from farming, because that's much easier said than done, but if you can start pushing in the turrets and taking objectives before that Rona ramps up, before she gets that 2-3 item power spike, then you can really set yourself up into a good position to close out the game before the Rona is just too difficult to handle.
All right, so trying to make sure that they can shut that down before it becomes a real threat during this game. Make sure to let us know who you are supporting in this one. Get on Twitter and use the hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know whether you want Queso to make it into the Vainglory8 or if you're a fan of Calamity Reborn. Without further ado, it's time to get on into our first game of the day and pass it over to Jaws and Dowsy.
Thanks, guys. Here we go. Final day. Calamity Reborn versus Team Queso. Calamity on the blue side and Team Queso are on the red. We're going to get on into the fold here, Dowsy, for game number 1.
This is such a hype matchup, Jaws, for the first of our promotion Vainglory 8 games here, because this is Mr. Keiko versus Apfel and Ghost. History time back in spring of this year. There was a team called Lemon and Lime, Jaws. It consisted of Apfel in the lane, Mr. Keiko in the jungle, and Ghost in that captain position. And they qualified for the Vainglory 8. They managed to get in. But Mr. Keiko, he didn't want to go into the Vainglory 8. He felt like there was better options for him, and he joined this team called Team Queso back in summer. Then in summer, Queso failed to get into the Vainglory 8. They were in the challenge battles, but they weren't quite able to get there. But here, in the autumn season, you have former teammates fighting for one of those Vainglory 8 spots. This could be Mr. Keiko's chance to make it into that Vainglory 8, but he has to beat his former opponents, or teammates even.
Well, they're opponents now, Dazzy, and that's what's important. Mr. Keiko on this Rona as well. We've seen Team Queso run this style of composition before against Team Clash a couple of days ago. Just all in, delete one target, and that target is going to be his former teammate in Apfel.
Yeah, it certainly will be, and it's going to be really exciting to watch Mr. Keiko play this Rona because he is very talented, Mr. Keiko, such a mechanically gifted player here in Europe, but he also is one of the most unusual laners when it comes to what he decides to prioritize in his builds. Always has a different off-meta build, and he always has a reasoning behind it as well. After the challenge battle games earlier on this week, he built double Vampirism, Poison Shiv, and the Serpent's Mask, which obviously is ineffective, but he had really good reasoning behind it. He was against a double weapon power composition, but he built Aegis, and there was really good reasoning behind it, you know? It seems really silly, and perhaps it's not as effective as other builds, but there is a thought pattern behind it, and it's hard to argue with the thought pattern because there's logic. So Mr. Keiko really has a different outlook on the game of Vainglory, which I think is quite exciting and competitive.
Yeah, the inventor is what we'll call him. Mr. Keiko in a little trouble, though. Does have to use that out of the fray to get out of combat. Did go for a short duel with Ghost, but short duel with Apfel even, but Ghost was there to heal him up in the process. PRZ not really paying any attention to the lane, just helping Dark Ghost farm away, and that's going to leave Aeon a lot of time as well on this rhyme. Something that they touched on the desk was the fact that it's really on Apfel and the laners of Calamity Reborn just to make sure Keiko doesn't get too far ahead, because a late game Rona, especially against someone like Apfel, is going to have a tough time. As soon as an all-in comp jumps on your squishiest member in Apfel, he's going to get deleted pretty quickly, and it's going to be a tall order for Ghost and Aeon to actually keep Mr. Keiko off him.
Yeah, Apfel's going to really have to have fantastic peeling coming out of Ghost, the heals, sigils to give him movement speed, and of course also give him that healing that he needs, and that's when Aeon comes in to try and just become that frontline threat to stop up this Rona. Rona versus Rhyme is always a fun matchup, Jaws, because they kind of fulfill similar roles. Both are melee brawling heroes that generate a lot of fortified health, but Rona just seems to do it a little bit better because of her synergy with Breaking Point, which just gives her so much damage once she spins up and gets all those Breaking Point stacks online. So generally, Rona, one of those heroes, especially here on 2.10, that can out-trade a Rhyme, out-trade a Cruel, due to her synergy on her kit and the current strength of the items that she builds. So we'll have to see how this one does play out. Also, Dark Ghost on this Crystal Power Blackfeather, pretty good into both Fox and Rhyme as well, especially when you play it at range, though Dark Ghost is going to be prioritizing a Aftershock in his build. So he's going to be playing Crystal Power Blackfeather in a bit of a weapon power style, which normally doesn't work too good for Blackfeather, but since the 2.10 nerfs to his weapon power kit, it almost feels like Crystal Power Blackfeather plays in the playstyle of weapon power Blackfeather does it better than weapon power Blackfeather, which is kind of absurd, but that's the point of the game we're at.
Well, it's going to be easy for Atfel to itemize as well. You've got to imagine he's going to have mortal wounds to stop the healing coming out from Mr. K-Cool and Dark Ghost and PRZ as well when he does activate that fountain. So that's going to be an easy pickup for him of that poison shiv, although not going for it just yet. In fact, it's looking like he's just going to build a straight Sora Blade at this moment in time. Mr. K-Cool did end up backing off there, and he'll pick up his first item along with Dark Ghost, both completing theirs exactly the same time.
Yes, certainly, and so now we'll have to see exactly how this does play out for the teams. It's a bit of a power spike for Dark Ghost here, with the Aftershock can really burst down a single target as he dives onto the Lyra. Now, Mr. Keiko's team of Queso. I'm going to get into a bad habit that we calling it Team Mr. Keiko, looking to try and siege with this Crystal Power Black Feather.
Yeah, Dark Ghost doing a good job right now of just poking down Atfel and Aeon as he did rotate towards the lane. Their power spikes have come a lot quicker than Atfel's and Aeon's have, so they can do this. However, Ghost is there with sustain. Good old Lyra popping down a Sigil Dowsy, insta-healing Atfel to 100 HP, 100% HP, and then just back it off again. Doesn't get Bright Bulwarked, in fact, takes a lot of trade damage and has to pop that flask even. Dark Ghost is going to be a little bit more careful with his footing.
Yeah, no, it certainly will do. Dark Ghost on this Crystal Power Black Feather, not as tanky as his weapon power brethren, but the Aftershock does provide healing, and if he goes Eve of Harvest, that's going to be even more so. So that's where a Poison Shiv on Atfel is going to come in really handy, because not only does Rona generate a lot of life still with the Serpent's Mask, but so does Dark Ghost as well with the Crystal build that he is prioritizing on this Crystal Power Black Feather. Poison Shiv, very important, and you can see Atfel has the components for it, as well as the Sora Blade completed as his first tier 3 item, and I think that's fairly good. If he doesn't feel the need to attack a lot, then the Sora Blade's going to give him a bit more bang for his buck, try and hold this Rona at bay, which is good. He needs to try and do as much damage to Mr. Keiko before he dives on top of him.
And he will. Dungo's taking a lot of harass here, and the good thing about Calamity Reborn's composition is they can push Raves rather readily, although PRZ is determined to sink his teeth in for the time being on Ghost, but a Bright Bulwark will be there if necessary as well to make sure he backs off rather sharpish. Team Queso, they are all the correct levels, you'd say, Dazzy, for a big all-in engage. With Dark Ghost not even hitting, just Ghost not hitting that passageway just yet. They're going to want to have to make use of that, because that is a massive disengage tool, which we said Atfel was going to have to utilize in order to actually get away from Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost.
The one thing they don't have is reflex blocks, and that's a bit of a scary thing to not have when you're fighting against a level 6 plus Rhyme. That Valkyrie, super good into triple melee. That's why you pick Rhyme into triple melee, because he needs to be in melee range to generate fortified health, and he needs to be as close as his targets to land those Winter Spires and Valkyries. So without a reflex on all the members of Team Queso, they may just hold off until a Crucible is online for PRZ. Of course, the Black Feather can dodge out the CC with his Rose Offensive, but Rona would have to sidestep it with her movement abilities if she wanted to avoid it. And it's a really good shutdown tool into Fortress especially, so wait until the Crucible's online for PRZ. That's when I reckon Team Queso are going to try and pull the trigger, but they are getting close, and you can see Mr. Keiko, I talked about his love for off-meta building, where he's prioritized an Atlas as his second tier 3 item, loves buying defense early on. And the Atlas obviously is really good into Atfel because he can shut down the Vox's attack speed, which is his source of damage, his auto attacks, especially with this Sora Blade and Poison Shiv in tow. And so we'll have to see if he's able to make use of it.
Yeah, there's the Sigil into the front of the back line, but already snared. Darby's now Bright Bulwark, and Red Mist does hack onto Aeon. Valkyrie goes a little bit wide, though Dowsy and Aeon not making the best use of it, but they are able to disengage with the help of the Fountain and a couple of Sigils to keep them nice and healthy. But in Queso, all the while, just keeping healthy on themselves as well, using that Serpent's Mask and using the sustain coming out from Dark Ghost, they are able to just level the trade. More of a HP for energy trade in this regard.
Yeah, and this Lyra is always going to keep the side of Calamity Reborn very healthy, so Team Queso win condition is that they blow up the box as they attempt to dive in once more.
There's another into the fray. Oh, Hatfield just gets deleted by Dark Ghost. Oh, punished for stepping up, and that's exactly what they wanted to find. They kill onto the Vox, and now Mr. Keiko going fairly low, but they found the first kill.
And that's what I love about this Aftershock build from Dark Ghost on this Black Feather, because you can't really go for long engagements. Normally a Black Feather's win condition is that he gets to poke, and then he dives on for the execute when you play the Crystal Power route, but it's really difficult to do that against a Lyra. Lyra's healing on this current update, especially when you get those health items in your inventory like the Crucible, like the War Treads, it just makes it super difficult to actually achieve that win condition. So by going an Aftershock instead, it allows you to land an on point for the slow, and then jump on top of them with either the Rose Offensive or the Faint of Heart to provide that massive auto attack burst the Aftershock brings, and that's going to allow them to burst down the box like they need to.
Yeah, speaking about a lot of burst, that's exactly what Mr. Keiko has got. Jumped straight into the back line and just chucked that fell, but Ghost was there to heal him up with a sigil for the time being. However, Mr. Keiko and his turret isn't looking too healthy, Dowsy. This is something we saw in the game where they drafted a similar composition. Instead of a Fortress, it was actually an Arden, and when Mr. Keiko was on this Rona, and their turret just fell so early to Clash's relentless assault on it, and that's exactly what's happening now. Their composition not so good at taking things from range, they can just get pushed in from Apfel time and time again, and Lyra's got such a big presence in that lane as well.
Yeah, certainly do. They really just want to hold on to this turret as much as possible, but finally Calamity move forward to take it.
Well, there's the attack of the pack. The War Treads are going to get popped as well. Already, Mr. K-Call on that back line tries to use that into the fray, but the Bright Bulwark was there to snare him up. A sigil to keep Apfel alive for the time being, and duck dip diving and dodging as PRZ almost goes down to turret aggro there, so had to back off and pop the flask. Dark Ghost says one more on point Apfel's way, and that'll be just Team Queso clearing the wave now, maybe to do a little bit more damage down onto this tier 1 turret. Oh, I say that, this K-Call dive straight in. Yeah, Crucible used. There's going to be attack speed slow straight onto Aeon. That Amber's Pauldron's coming in. Use of Mr. K-Call, but now Dark Ghost in a little bit an issue. Does use that last charge of the Rose Offensive to get out of there. But going a little bit too hammer, I feel here, Dowsy. Could have just got a little bit more chip damage on that turret and might just pay for it with their turret going down.
They can't really focus the turret too readily, Draws, because they're triple melee. You know, it's something we've seen quite often in Europe. Europe loves its triple melee compositions. Most people will remember the Challenger Series team, Reliable Union, which consisted of Sneaky and a couple of other members before they made it into the Vainglory8, alongside Lemon and Lime back in spring. And Sneaky was kind of cut from the roster, so formed Salty Potatoes for his revenge. And they played a fantastic triple melee composition, and this is quite typical of the triple melee composition playstyle, is that often you'll lose your first turret like we just saw here, but you buy early defensive items. As you can see, Mr. K-Cool already has his Atlas and his Aegis online. Dark Ghost has his tier 2 armor as well as a reflex block and his second offensive item, which is the Dragon's Eye. And PRZ prioritizing a War Treads to get in and out of action very early, because that's what a triple melee composition needs. It needs movement speed, it needs engage, and it needs tanky defensive stats. They scale up towards that 13-14 minute mark. And then obviously when the Kraken spawns, and that's when the triple melee composition is really able to take those brawls that they want. Team Queso have been very weathered in their approach so far. This single kill is more a testament to Team Queso than it is Calamity Reborn, because Calamity Reborn in this early game actually calls all the shots. Every map movement should be dictated by Calamity Reborn, because they have the Vox and the Rhyme. Their early game and their range advantage with the Lyra is too hard for Queso to deal with. But here we go, fights breaking out.
Yeah, Sigils get out of the way for the time being. There's a big route actually onto PRZ, and the Valkyrie actually stuns Mr. Keiko in the back line. Can't make his way into the fight just yet, and Apfel and Aeon's so healthy in these fights. That massive Valkyrie stopped any damage coming out of Mr. Keiko, and they're forced to disengage.
Yeah, and this is really clever by Queso, knowing that the disengage can come out early. They've held onto their fountain here, get that Treant onto Mr. Keiko, allow him to regen some health, maybe they can re-engage, but Ghost hasn't actually expended anything for that previous fight, and Aeon is very close to getting his Valkyrie back online as well. The Crucible will be matching time, so that's something to keep in mind. PRZ can match it, but he doesn't really want to fight until his Wolves are back online. The attack of the pack for the Fortress has always been one of the major engage tools of a triple melee composition, often Fortress featured in triple melee compositions because he can get his team in there, and the attack of the pack makes him so deadly if the opposing team isn't quite able to kite back. But Calamity Reborn, recognizing that that is how you beat Triple Melee are kiting back really well, and the Lyra just allows them to re-heal back up and then have such a health advantage over Team Queso that then any team fight would be negative for Team Queso. So for the next minute or so, Team Queso are going to take things as slow as possible, try and get some more items into their system. Mr. Keiko sitting on about 100 gold means he can go towards a Sora Blade as his next item, perhaps even prioritize the Bone Saw, similar to the way Apfel has done so, because you have to feel that there's going to be a pretty good armor stacking coming out of Calamity Reborn at a certain point into this game, but maybe he just threatens the Sora Blade for now. He can buy a 6 Sins. He's gone for the Heavy Steel, so the Heavy Steel means he will go Sora Blade. If he bought just the 6 Sins for now, then that might allow him to... Well, 6 Sins doesn't make any sense because that's not what it builds out of. And I'm sorry, I'm tired. 6 Sins is bad. Just go Heavy Steel.
Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all
I was
good.
trying to
He's
make
getting
a
more
really clever point, Jaws, and then I realized that, you know, it's completely obsolete because the items I'm talking about don't build out of those components.
Well, you know, I mean, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If you're tired, man, you're tired. Some of us need early nights. You clearly need a little bit more of an early night than most of us. But Team Keiko, mind you, I mean, if it is, man, I wouldn't blame you at all. I don't mind sleeping around this time. It gets dark right now, so you know we're not in summer anymore, unfortunately. It's pretty chilly. But Team K-School, we gotta look back. Oh, they're gonna start the Kraken. I was gonna make an intelligent one there as well, Dowsy, but we'll just talk about this, shall we? So Mr. Keiko does this all the time, and Team Queso do this also. They push forward onto this tri-brush here and just allow Mr. Keiko to take this Kraken on his own. Just like Calamity are actually gonna sniff this one out. However, it's kind of a Team Queso special, it feels, at this point in the game, in this point of the VGL at least. And now that Kraken is just gonna fully reset here. I'll go back to my point, Dowsy, I was trying to make.
Go for it.
They picked Lyra first. Calamity had the situation to pick whatever they wanted first pick, apart from the heroes that were banned. They picked Lyra, and Team Queso still drafted this composition. It just shows how, well, maybe a little bit greedy on the fact that they are running a triple melee into a Lyra, but it just shows how competent and confident they are coming into this matchup as well.
Well, the thing about the triple melee heroes that they've picked is Rona has mortal wounds in her kit, and so does Fortress, so it means that you can kind of cut out the healing. Here comes the fight, though.
Well, here comes the engage. The war threads have already been popped. There come the wolves also, but Apfel doing a good job of kiting back. Ghost still hasn't used that passageway, holding on for it, and Apfel is just retreating under that turret. Tier 1 has not gone yet, but Rhyme has already fallen. Equal and Dark Ghost were able to just execute him, and now they can just rotate down towards this Kraken. We'll see if they want to start it up here. What a fantastic pick on Dale.
Yeah, that's really clever, and I think Queso have recognized that, or maybe talk about it in a second.
Well, Dark Ghost took a little bit of damage, but the sigil was there to heal him. Keiko, PRZ, and Dark Ghost are fairly low here, Dowsy. Although that fortified HP coming out from Mr. K-Call, and they're going to go for that re-engage. That bright bulwark came down, but Apfel is already going to be the main target, jumping through that passageway, but Mr. K-Call is going to be able to chase him up, and PRZ takes one last look at him, but he's already dead. K-Call manages to secure his second kill of the game, and it is now only Ghost to fend off against this Kraken. It's a still hit, Dowsy. It will
Get
be
your
a
pen
miracle,
ready.
but K-Call, it's not going to happen. But pen has only got one mark on it so far, so don't worry.
Oh, wow.
Only one
Look at,
captain still.
Dark Ghost's health is so low here. He is sitting on 200 health. It means he has to back away. Rhyme's coming back in. Team Queso are actually not going to be able to push with their Kraken. It's actually a really big win for the side of Calamity Reborn, because this Kraken, whilst it will secure the first turret, actually very unlikely that it's going to, well, I say unlikely. It will get the second turret, you think, as well, but it won't be as effective as it could have been. Triple melee, still very difficult to siege, especially when everyone is up. Team Queso will do their best to try and make sure this turret goes down, but actually look at the damage the Ryan is outputting. This is going to be Iken before the second turret goes down. Team Queso aren't going to get the most from this Kraken, so actually really smart move from Dark Ghost. What he did was auto-attacked, just a single auto-attack onto Dark Ghost and Mr. Keiko after the Kraken was taken. That cancels out the regeneration buff that you get from the Kraken to heal you back up, and force them both to backport so that they could actually be involved in the push. Meant only one turret goes down. That's a gold gain going over to Calamity Reborn, and Team Queso not getting as much as they want from that Kraken. However, let's talk about what Team Queso have recognized here, because they've realized there's a new win condition in their team fights. They can't focus the Lyra because she's too speedy and too tanky. They can't focus the Vox because Ghost is providing so much peeling ability, but Rhyme is pretty slow, and so they focus the old Granddad down. He's not going to be able to run away, and then it's a 2 versus 3 that they can win out. Team Queso now focusing on this Vox. Aeon is actually not tanky at all. The Shatter Glass and the Broken Myth, which means he's generating a lot of fortified health, but he doesn't have the tanky stacks to go with it. And Mr. K-Cool with the Breaking Point, Dark Ghost with the Aftershock, and the Dragon's Eye can actually just generate a lot of power for themselves and take down this Rhyme pretty quickly. Aeon will have to get his Evil Harvest on to get some lifesteal for himself, but he also needs to now focus on his defensive items, and it's really hard for a jungler at the 19-minute mark to actually get gold into his system. So it's going to be a while before he gets his tier 3 items both finished. Look at Apfel's build. 4 red items, gone the Breaking Point, Bonesaw, Poison Shift, and Sorrow Blade combination. That's triple attack speed. There's only a single Atlas on the side of Team Queso. This is pretty poor itemization from Team Queso. If I was Dark Ghost and PRZ, I would be rushing into an Atlas as quickly as possible, because when Vox goes triple attack speed, that means his damage output is slightly lower if his Atlas, because the attack speed has been slowed down, and the Atlas becomes even more valuable for Team Queso, especially on a triple melee composition. So Dark Ghost really needs to make sure Atlas is his next item.
Atfel sneaking out the bush, but Mr. Keiko does jump on him. Sigil used as well as that reflex bolt from Atfel. That's a big Valkyrie, but it's going to get blocked by that Crucible. Also, the Wolves have been unleashed, and Mr. Keiko has found himself on the back line, and Atfel just moving forwards, trying to escape him, but it wasn't enough. Mr. Keiko with the perfect flank, and now is getting a 2-man red mist. Aeon with very little defenses, like you were mentioning a minute ago, just melts in front of him. Team Queso find yet another pick. Yeah,
that was really strange positioning coming out of Apfel there. Calamity Reborn have recognized that Team Queso are now focusing the Rhyme down, and Apfel tried to put himself in a position where he would be focused instead of Rhyme, but he can't be focused because he is very squishy. He has even gone Journey Boots instead of War Treads, which provides you extra health, which is a very bold decision. Team Queso need to push this Rhyme off the Kraken if they want to be able to secure it, so that's what Dark Ghost is doing right now. Does have to be careful he doesn't get rooted up, but they are just going to engage.
Yeah, well, they might as well, Daz. They're going to be honest with you. It's a 2v3 now. It's a 1v3. Aeon, only member left alive. Ghost is going to fall even after using that passageway to escape. And that is going to be another Kraken on the board here for Team Queso. They are coming out the gate on fire, Dowsy. And I'm not just talking about that Fortress skin.
No, yeah, this is pretty good stuff from Team Queso. PRZ's even got himself an Aftershock, something he did on Thursday against Clash on this Fortress, just to provide that extra burst damage onto the target they decide to focus down. Doesn't mean he doesn't have an Atlas, but Dark Ghost has finished his now, and that should be enough that they are able to reduce the attack speed of the Vox. If one Atlas gets blocked, the second one shouldn't. If they are on top of the Vox, he should die due to his very squishy nature. Only has 2,600 health, which is just going to melt in front of Mr. K-Cool and Dark Ghost if they can get on top of him, due to the fact he has close no resistances, just that Aegis on top of it. This Kraken finds the first turret. He's going to look for the second one here, and Team Queso may even just mount and engage so that they secure this choke point turret.
Yeah, the last Kraken did secure 1.5 turrets. This one doing a little bit more here. Secured the other half to that turret, although Bright Bulwark has been used, and PRC actually pops those War Treads to get them out of the way. But Ghost is going to follow that up with a set of his own. But Athel steps a little bit too far forward. Valkyrie only slows PRC and Mr. Kegel. That's not going to stop him at all. Red Mist is going to come through. That's going to be churning up loads of minions, just regenerating so much HP, but it didn't seem to matter in the end. They are all too low to actually carry on the fight, and Calamity Reborn finally find their first kills and turn it into an ace.
Yeah, it's pretty disastrous for Team Queso. 40 seconds on the death time, as this is 2 turrets easily taken by Calamity Reborn. Depending on how brave they are, they might even go for a third, but I doubt it, due to the fact that when you take a turret, the death times get reduced by about 5 seconds, I believe it is. And so the guys will be spawning very quickly, but because it's a 4 damage item box build, they can take turrets very quickly. They decide that with 10 seconds on the death timers, whilst they probably could have got and third turret, they would have put themselves in a similar position that Queso was in previously, where if they get aced, the game is over. Not really worthwhile, but gold infusions back into Aeon's system, and look, he can build his defensive items now, which is just so valuable for this Rhyme. Is going to pick up his Aegis, has enough gold for an Atlas as well, but he might just go for the metal jacket. Often, Atlases aren't actually picked up when there's a Rona on the enemy team, because when you Atlas a Rona, yes, it's going to reduce her attack speed, but a fairly decent Rona will hold on to a red miss when she gets Atlas, because Atlas doesn't actually do anything to red miss, and then you spin to win, the Atlas debuff wears off, and then you can continue auto-attacking again. So often metal jackets get prioritized for that reason, just to give you extra armor stats against the Rona. We're at a pretty even point in the game where everyone is fairly even on items here. Infusions have just been repurchased by Calamity Reborn. They may be feeling brave, but Queso's still in a very good position, and unless Calamity Reborn are able to keep Aeon alive on the front line, whilst Atful is able to focus down either Dark Ghost or Mr. K-Cool, then Team Queso are going to continue winning these team fights. With a third Kraken just spawning, Queso are very, very much looking to try and find that team fight soon, and so I expect them to look for it. And now a third Atlas is on their side. PRZ has that. Atful's going to have a very difficult time here. He can only block 2 of them unless there's a mistake coming out of Team Queso, and so having to kite back is going to be his major priority.
Well, he's been trying to do that the whole game, and even picking up those tier 3 boots as well. Pops them, and it just turns out you got another wolf on your face, or you got Mr. Keiko jumping in on the back line again. It's a bit of a difficult situation. We did say that at the start of the game, that Atful was going to have a tough time, especially when it came towards the end of the game. Atlases, obviously, across the board, like you were mentioning, re-buying all the infusions also. But now Aeon's got a bit more defenses here, Dowsy. You said you wanted to see more on him. He's actually got the metal jacket. Obviously, he finished the Aegis a fair while ago, and now he's surviving in these fights, but can he really get the damage off? He's more of a Valkyrie bot right now, it seems, just making sure Atful stays alive.
Yeah, that's it. Because of the triple melee composition is trying to run past the Rhyme in most fights, it's actually pretty difficult for him to generate a massive amount of fortified health by the Winter Spires. The Fortress allows him to kind of just run past them. And of course, Black Cleaver and Rono are fairly mobile themselves. So whilst Rhyme is really good into triple melee, if he's not hitting his abilities, then he's not generating fortified health, and he's not as tanky as he could be. But with the Eve of Harvest and double defensive, he is far more tankier. This is the tankiest the Rhyme has been so far. It's a huge power spike for Aeon, realistically, comparatively to the previous team fights in this game. And that's why Team Queso are very nervous to take these fights. They know that it could go wrong.
Oh, this is my favourite situation, when they sit in each mustache brush. Already on the back line is Mr. Keiko. Valkyrie comes down, only stuns 1 this time. It's only going to stun Dark Ghost. It's at really low. That red miss keeping Mr. Keiko alive, and Atfel's already going to fall. And now is Aeon versus the world. Gets a 2-man route, actually, though. Keiko's falling pretty low also. Aeon might be able to turn this one around. Keiko's fortified health is just going to wear off here, and Dark Ghost is also pretty low.
That team fight was actually really poorly executed by Team Queso. All 3 members used their Atlas at the same time. They all just come off a cooldown at the same time as well. And the reflex block from Atful was used fairly early on into the team fight. So I'm not sure what happened to the line of communication there from Team Queso, because there was roughly about a 3-second period where none of the Atlases were being used by Team Queso, and then all 3 members all triggered their Atlas at the same time. There really needs to be an order here. Mr. Keiko dives on in, uses his Atlas, it's likely to get blocked, then it's Dark Ghost or PRZ's turn, and then the third man will go for it. Obviously, sometimes those orders don't work out just based on how the team fight works, but Team Queso have a unified objective, which is dive the Vox with the Atlases and just slow down his attack speed. And because none of the members use their Atlas until the very last minute of that team fight, Vox got off a lot of damage, and the team was too squishy, too low on health to actually continue the fight against this new buffed up Rhyme that has his Aegis, has his metal jacket, has his Eve of Harvest. Does seem like Dark Ghost waiting in base for the goal to finish off a broken myth, but his teammates are dying alongside him, just about escaping here. Perhaps Dark Ghost is actually not with us.
He's got 14k. I mean, that's fairly close to a broken myth. He's just picked up an infusion now, so he is with us. He is in the land of the living, Dowsy. Don't you worry. Mr. Keiko wasn't, though. Almost went down. That was a bit of an odd situation where you only find 2 people, PRZ and Keiko, all alone, and that would just lead the Kraken to be taken. Calamity Reborn were just like, okay, we've seen you just back at base, and we've just seen Mr. Keiko get chunked. That's a free Kraken for us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Keiko, if Dark Ghost wasn't with them, didn't really want to be in a position where they lose too much HP, because that just allows Calamity Reborn in any situation to secure this Kraken. Their first Kraken of the game as well. I have to see how effective this Kraken can be for them, because the Kraken forces them to push forward. that's going to put them in melee range of Team Queso. The worst place that Calamity Reborn can actually fight Team Queso is inside Team Queso's base. It's the hardest to kite back from. And so Team Queso, despite only having 2 Vein Crystal turrets left, can actually take this Kraken down fairly quickly when they want to commit to it, and also can take down Calamity Reborn very quickly. Here's the engage.
Well, there's the engage into the fray used already. The Valkyrie was really good. Dark Ghost hit with the full duration, and that'll be Mr. Cable just trying to kill Atho, but he's just doing too much damage. He ends up cutting him down, and that'll be PRZ, the only one dedicated to actually kill the Kraken. Backed off so soon because Aeon was destroying the base as well. Calamity Reborn looking to take game number 1 with that Kraken push. Perfectly timed team fight. Mr. K-Core and Dark Ghost fell. Atfel, Ghost, and Aeon find their first win.
They certainly do, and once more, execution out of Team Queso was poor. Triple melee compositions don't work if the triple melee split up. PRZ, sure, you recognize that Aeon is in your base, but you can't split from the team. It has to be a unanimous decision to dive one target in the other. And again, the Atlases were poorly timed. Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost used their Atlas at the same time. It was easily blocked by Atful, meaning there was no attack speed debuff to come out from Team Queso. And with the help of Ghost to allow Atful to escape, without PRZ to allow Team Queso to actually stick to the box, an easy teamfight win for Calamity Reborn in game 1 of this series.
Well, coming out the gate pretty strong. Team Queso looks so good. They found the first 5 kills of the game, and it wasn't until halfway through Calamity Reborn finally found their first, which turned out to actually be an ace. Well played from both sides. I mean, played to their win conditions, but it just turned out Calamity Reborn just pipped them to the post of that final Kraken. We'll send it over to the desk, however, where they can break down the Calamity Reborn win even further.
Well, Queso started things off strong in that one, but unfortunately could not keep that momentum rolling, and Calamity later on in the game managed to come online themselves and managed to take this one out in the end. But very slow-paced start to the game, though. This was not the early aggression that we've been seeing come out yesterday.
Yeah, not at all. And this was almost a difficult game to analyze because on paper, when it went this late, Queso should have been the ones that had the advantage with their composition. You know, this Rona should have been able to take over, just start spinning up on this Rhyme. They should have been able to delete this Vox, but the way that the team fights were executed is what Dowsy was talking about, especially at the end there with the Atlas Pauldrons being used, the reflex blocks coming out expertly for the side of Calamity. It just, the in-game, the team fight execution went in the favor of Calamity Reborn in the late game.
Absolutely. It's once we got to that later game stage, it felt like Queso started to fall off in those team fights. And we could take a look at one of the team fights that Queso was still in charge. And this was kind of the culmination of the entire early game leading up to this point. They managed to finish off Atfel and managed to get a Kraken off of this fight as well. Yeah,
this is one where they were using their team composition to just force Calamity into positions where they really couldn't work as a team. First, the Rhyme gets a little bit isolated, has to run all the way around to rejoin his team, and then the Vox just ends up caught a little bit out of position because it was almost like they weren't expecting Queso to react the way that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once Queso did react, they managed to capitalize on that kill, managed to grab a Kraken, and they got a significant push off the back of that, but that was kind of the last winning point for Queso. They had that entire 20 minutes in the early game, but then Calamity, off the back of this siege, managed to win a fight and come back into the game.
And this is something we see all too often, a team pushing up with a siege and then just getting caught out at the tail end of it. You can see at the start of this fight, Fortress and Rona are already extremely low, and the members of Calamity are able to just dive on into them without really any repercussions. They get the 2 kills, they turn it into an ace, and when they find the ace, all of them were still at about 3/4 health, so it was just the timing of when they chose to engage just before the Kraken died. You know, it completely caught Queso off guard. They were not ready for a fight at that moment.
Yeah, and then after that team fight, it felt like Queso couldn't get back on top of things during these fights. It felt like at that point, Calamity had figured out exactly how to win these fights and how to turn this into a victory. And that's exactly what we saw in the next replay as well. We can look at the last team fight that came on through, as it was Calamity managing to grab a Kraken for themselves and start to push this one home for a victory.
And once again, keep your eyes on the activation of the Atlas Pauldrons and the fact that they do get blocked in this last team fight as Calamity push up. It's right there. They already have an advantage in this fight because Fortress is not with the team. But they have this split with Rhyme just pushing in, but they can't kill Vox. Vox is surviving so long with the help of a Lyra that he's able to just kite around, build up those stacks, and build them almost as quickly as the Rona Dark Ghost also, once we got towards the later stages of this game, wasn't able to have the same level of impact as he did in the early game. And you wonder if it was the itemization. I mean, his build wasn't a terrible build by any stretch, but I think the fact that he went 2 offensive items and then completely delayed that 3rd offensive item to focus on the defense, maybe that ends up costing them a little bit. Maybe if they have that little bit of extra burst damage in the start of the fights, they can take down that Vox before all the healing comes through. But it's very difficult to say. It was just a really, really well-played few team fights from Calamity.
Yeah, fantastic stuff coming out from Calamity, and that means that they are now 1-0 up in this series, just 2 games away from re-qualifying into the Vainglory8. And let's not forget, last challenge battles was when Calamity actually made it into the Vainglory8 in the first place. Had that season, it wasn't the most successful season. Now they're here again. And by the looks of things, they're wanting to make sure that they get a second chance at the Vainglory8. We'll find out if that's going to happen here. But it's time to get on into the draft for game number 2. So what are we expecting to change here? Because it feels like this Rona pick, while it was a huge focus of that draft, wasn't quite as effective as it needed to be.
Yeah, and it's weird because this wasn't like it wasn't an unconventional Rona build out of Mr. K Cool. Like, we've known Mr. K Cool for unconventional builds, but he kind of went what was standard and what has been winning for a lot of teams. They just weren't able to finish the game off. They weren't able to close it out the way that we've seen other teams with the Rona do. So I don't think the Rona pick was an issue. I don't think the draft was an issue for either team. I think both teams ended up with a very strong draft with very clear win conditions that they were happy with. It was just purely about the in-game play.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be Celeste banned away here by Queso. Calamity Reborn respond by taking the Lyra off the board. I'm wondering if this Celeste is something that Calamity have been playing a lot in scrims or something along those lines, because this is the second Celeste ban we're going to see in this series, but Arden will be the first lock-in. That's answered with a Batiste. So already we're off to a strange start in this draft.
Yeah, slightly unconventional just with the Celeste ban, but again, that's targeted at Calamity. But then the Batiste pickup as a first pick B-side is very interesting to me because it doesn't really give away a lot of what you're doing, because you obviously kind of expect it to be in the jungle role, but it can very easily be flexed to the captain role. And obviously Queso not wanting to allow the Catherine Batiste duo to come through, so they do ban away that selection. I'm also intrigued by the Reza bans coming through, because Reza is a pick that, yes, there are some players that have been focusing it and doing quite well with it, but overall it has not been a very strong pick.
I mean, honestly, the bans in general, looking at this game, Lyra's kind of the only ban that we've seen pretty much at all. Catherine is like a situational ban that you do when it's Batiste and Kestrel are kind of in the mix. Those are the 2 situations, and maybe Idris. But other than that, the 3 other bans have been a little bit bizarre coming on through. Vox will be locked in, though, alongside this Batiste, and they still don't know whether this will be jungle or captain here. So still got that flex going for Calamity Reborn, and we'll see whether they can continue flexing as they come on into game number 2 here. But Team Queso have to round out this composition with an Arden.
Yeah, and well, Arden is obviously a very strong pickup. They're going to grab themselves the Baron to match with it. I like Baron into both Vox and Batiste. Obviously, against the Vox, you have so much damage in the lane once you start to get some items online. But against the Batiste, if he throws an Ordained on you, you just jump jets away, and you don't have to worry about the stun at all. The Samuel pick to round it out is a little bit strange just because of the way that both Baron and Samuel work. They aren't the greatest at synergizing together because you usually want someone who can protect the Baron or be a little bit more, offer a little bit more assistance in terms of helping the Baron to get out of bad situations or prevent people from diving onto him. But there isn't a whole lot of dive available to Calamity Reborn at the moment. I feel like they may need to flex the Batiste into the captain role, and that's exactly what they're going to do as they pick up a Black Feather.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see how this Samuel Baron composition will work here for Queso. But on the other side of that coin, Samuel is very good at dishing out a lot of damage across the course of the game, and one of the things we always criticize a Samuel pick for is it's very difficult to finish those kills off. One thing Baron is very good at doing is finishing those kills, so maybe this could work wonders for them. How are you expecting this one to pan out? Because obviously Vox and Blackfeather you feel like towards the middle stages of the game, that can be incredibly aggressive.
It can be, but because it's going to be very likely a Crystal Black Feather, I'm still very worried about their ability to dive onto this Baron and try and shut down Mr. K-Cool with this pick. So I feel like the advantage in this draft, just compositionally, definitely goes over to the side of Team Queso. As long as they can execute on their win conditions, get this with Samuel to level 2, try and win out just in the matchup. They don't need to go aggressive with it, but they do have a winning matchup when it comes to a straight up, one-on-one type situation. In the early game, they should have a lot more pressure.
All right, so definitely not necessarily aggressive, but they have to be proactive, and they have to be the ones in charge during the early game. See if that's going to come to pass here. Let us know whether you think Queso have got what it takes to even up the series on Twitter using that hashtag Vainglory8. It's time to pass it once again to Jaws and Dowsy to get into game number 2 of this series.
Thank you very much, guys. Here we go. Straight back onto the fold after that Calamity Reborn win. And Team Queso, they've scrapped the triple melee Dowsy. They're going straight into double range this time around. PRZ, he's on the Arden. And we got Mr. K-Cool's Baron on the fold as well.
I love the fact that we're looking at PRZ's Arden right now, because PRZ is a exceptional Arden player. His gauntlet play has always been so impressive. If you want to talk about impressive hero picks for the side of Team Queso, then it's PRZ's Arden and it's Dark Ghost's Samuel. He is a fantastic Samuel. One of the reasons Team Queso were able to take down Echo Fox in the summer was due to Dark Ghost's Samuel play. So this is a really strong composition. They're playing to Team Queso's strength. Mr. K-Cool on this Baron, very experienced with the hero, although adds a bit of a strange twist to Baron. He is the only Baron player in competitive play, Jaws, that I've ever seen build defensively on Baron and also build Poison Shiv on Baron before. I'm not sure he will do it this game. I guess there's an argument to be had if Aeon goes towards a Lifesteal, Crystal Power, Black Feather build, if Apfel gets a Poison Shiv, which he's likely to do, but doesn't necessarily need to against the enemy composition. Ghost has a lot of natural regen as well, but it's something Mr. K-Cool has been known to do, so we'll have to see what he does decide to build on Baron. It's been a long time since we've seen him play it.
Well, he's going to be up against Apfel in the lane once again, but this time he's not going to get shoved in. He's got splash damage in the rockets, so he's going to be all good in that regard. But Ghost is going to pay him a little visit as well, just seemingly permanently sitting up in this lane. You can kind of tell how Calamity Reborn, how scared they are of Mr. K-Cool, especially on this Baron. It can get to late game, it can get pretty frightening, and that's exactly where Mr. K-Cool likes to play. Also, that's where we saw Rona get to last time around. They just weren't able to execute it as well as they'd hoped.
Yeah, Ghost's captain rotations are actually fairly intelligent. He sits in the lane until Aeon wants to contest the neutral objective of the map, which is this Elder Treant. Aeon's been sitting there for quite some time. He is going to start it up now with the help of Ghost. They figure that there's going to be no gank in the lane and that Dark Ghost is uninterested in contesting the Elder Treant. So that's a free neutral objective going over towards Aeon, which is really good for the Crystal Power Black Feather. Samuel, super strong in the early stages of the game. Dark Ghost has a lot of power and is able to really influence this matchup against the Crystal Power Black Feather. In fact, at all stages of the game, Samuel, in theory, can be stronger than Crystal Power Black Feather. That's where Ghost comes in. His rotations basically bridge the gap between that difference. By staying in the lane, he keeps Apfel safe from ganks, also keeps threatening Mr. K-Cool to try and stop him from generating a good income. But when necessary, he can go down to this central Treant to put the pressure on Dark Ghost and allow for Aeon to try and get an experience lead.
Well, he's doing that at the moment, and in fact, Aeon's got 21 over Dark Ghost's 14 CS at the time, and he's up in the lane right now, just shoving in Ghost and Apfel to try and get some early damage onto that turret. We speak about how Samuel's probably one of the strongest level 2 heroes in the game, and already getting nice chip damage onto that tier 1 also. Queso, over the last few games and last few series, Dowsy, they have given up that tier 1 turret more often than not. Ordain does come through and stun Dark Ghost. He is going to chug that blast just to make sure he can stay alive. A bit of extra shielding and healing will make sure of that. And that'll be Aeon rotating towards the lane. Even a level lead over Dark Ghost as well. You can really show where Aeon likes to play. Farm up, I want to get CS, I want to get XP, I want to be ahead of my enemy jungler in that regard, and then pile pressure into the lane. That's exactly what he's been doing.
Yeah, and this is fairly standard of a jungler at high competitive level, making sure that they're rotating as such to keep an experience lead. He's even going to steal away one of the treants here to keep that experience lead over Dark Ghost, or I say steal away, attempt to steal away. Dark Ghost could secure this fairly easily with Corrupted Genius, but you can see currently Ghost positioning in such a way that if Dark Ghost was to move up for that auto attack, the Corrupted Genius proc, then Ghost could put the Ordain down, and actually Dark Ghost would be threatened of a death. So really good rotation from Ghost just to make sure that Aeon secures that treant, and that's going to continue this lead and experience that Aeon has generated, all because Dark Ghost wanted to siege the turret. The siege composition from Team Queso with a Baron, with a Samuel, is actually really strong, and it's actually difficult for Calamity Reborn to get these waves. Fox, not the greatest of wave clear. Crystal Power Black Feather is okay once he gets some Crystal Power items into his inventory, but doesn't have them just yet. Ghost provides, I guess, effective peel, but doesn't really have the burst of a bad Mojo to clear waves since he is that captain. So Team Queso think that their win condition is sieging here, and with a Samuel they can do it really well. We'll have to see if they're able to secure their first turret though, because if they don't, that's massive
that was a big mad mojo. That was a mad mojo. Don't hit Dark Ghost to Mr. Kegel. Fountain did come out. PRZ going fairly low as well. Apple pushing forward. Did use the wait for it early on as also. Oblivion went a little bit wide. Couldn't quite catch Atfel on the retreat. Ghost just piling on the pressure with that Ordain. It's going to hit Mr. Kegel as well. That splash damage hitting 2 people right now, but it wasn't a math. Aeon's actually going to be able to secure the kill, and Atfel manages to get one on the board for his team.
Certainly do. This is a really good start for Calamity Reborn. Like mentioned, Team Queso playing around the siege prowess that their composition has, but without a gauntlet to kind of allow them a bit of space, a bit of room, this Batiste has a lot more early power over the composition, and due to Aeon's aggressive jungling, stealing away camps and generating experience leads over Dark Ghost, there's a massive deficit between these two junglers. Normally Samuel should have more power than Blackfeather, but Aeon is out jungling his opponent right now. Shadowglass now purchased Aeon almost at level 8 as well, just sitting half an experience bar, not even that, a quarter of an experience bar away from hitting level 8. He will overdrive his on point very shortly, giving him range to actually deal with this composition that Queso have. That's going to allow Calamity Reborn even more power. It doesn't seem like much, this 400 gold lead, but if you just consider that gold lead is probably in the jungle, it puts Aeon just slightly ahead of Dark Ghost at all times. Also, the Shadow Glass for Aeon means his burst damage is much better than Dark Ghost, who has the Dragon's Eye, meaning he has to actually stack it up before it's going to be doing work. It takes 4 seconds to get 4 stacks, and that's when Dragon's Eye has more effective crystal power than the Shadow Glass. And so Dark Ghost, whilst on the Samuel, can do a lot of damage and stack it up fairly quickly. If he is in combat for quite some time, he's going to be threatened by Ghost's Ordain, and without a reflex block yet, he's going to have to be really careful how he positions, because the Drifting Dart can be cancelled out by a good Ordain.
Yeah, now Calamity Reborn are getting their revenge on the siege that Queso were able to put out earlier, and now pushing on to that turret. Those on points really starting to stack up, mind you. 400 damage onto Mr. Keiko a couple of seconds ago. Aeon with the Shadow Glass. He's making good work of it, dowsing, good use of it, I should say. Ordain is going to lock Dark Ghost in. Only got a couple of stacks on his Dragon's Eye, in fact going up to 3. Instantly getting deleted though as soon as Calamity do back off here as well. And that's exactly what they seemingly need to do. Just in out of the team fights, and have Aeon just poking away with that on point, and he's even got an infusion in his inventory as well. You can see really why they want to put the pressure. Dark Ghost now sieging up this turret once again, get to about half HP, but that's half HP in like 4 minutes or so, Dowsy. And now he's trapped in the Ordain, does dodge out of the way of that fearsome shade and the wait for it. Nice sidestepping there, and in fact Atfel going extremely low. Aeon's going to join the fight for the time being, but PRZ and Dark Ghost should make it out of it. Or Aeon going for a turret dive, I should say, little less than that, because he does find it with the Rose Offensive. Aeon Cannon's going to come down. Gauntlet also locks them in place for the time being. Ghost going extremely low. Little energy, little HP, but Mr. Keiko can't find the valuable shot to kill him off. In fact, that flask just saved him, and that's Calamity taking one completely for free.
That's such a mistake coming out of Team Queso. 2 frontier mistakes here, and look at Aeon taking away all the backs of this. They're really punishing Team Queso for their errors here. First mistake, Mr. Keiko trying his best to finish the double forward camp so he can purchase an item. yes, items are great and Baron needs them, but when your team has basically killed Apfel and Ghost in a 2v2, then the rotation game up into the lane has to be quick so you can secure that kill and actually get that siege that you want onto that first turret. Second mistake, PRZ. PRZ's a talented captain. I really don't want to take anything away from him, Jaws, but he has a really bad habit of late fountains or just not using fountain for whatever reason. I'm not entirely sure what his decision-making behind it. Perhaps he figured that Dark Ghost was going to be able to escape. Maybe there was a call made that he was able to survive that and it was just an error from Team Queso as a team. Or maybe PRZ just pressed the wrong button. I don't know, but the fountain would have literally saved Dark Ghost's life. They could have turned that team fight because Mr. Cable was on the way. Team Queso losing one has put Aeon even further ahead.
Ordained traps Dark Ghost in. Aeon just moving forward, just trying to poke down Mr. Keiko, who even steps between PRZ and Dark Ghost to try and get an on point out. There's a triple on point for you right there. Dark Ghost moving forward also, putting so much pressure on. Dark Ghost actually having to move back now as he just finds himself mispositioned, and a wait for it will signs him up, and PRZ is forced to retreat as well. Now is afraid to kind of use this Gauntlet Dowser. He's way too low. If he does use it and bring it out, Calamity are just going to kill him.
6 seconds on his flask. They need to fight now. There's the gauntlet going down.
Gauntlet, 2 people hit. High on cannon as well came down, but it completely misses. Well, Mr. Kegel trapped up in the Ordain. Atfel's just going to move himself forward. They trade 1 for 1, but Atfel is able to just snipe away Mr. Kegel, and that leaves Dark Ghost on the wrong side of the map in enemy territory. As Calamity do take their tier 1 as well.
Yeah, and PRZ did not use his flask, which I expected him to do. Neither did Mr. Keiko. I think his may have just come off cooldown, actually, in the death timer. And Dark Ghost is going to get singled out here. Really nice rotation by Apfel, secures the double camp once more. Doubles in the backs give the most gold. The Treant, the healing camp, gives the most experience at the backs. And so by stealing away those doubles, you're denying gold income. Aeon with a cheeky steal as well. Dark Ghost is getting choked out. There is a 2-level advantage here for Aeon, due to the fact that Apfel and Aeon have just been so aggressive in pushing down Dark Ghost, and often in Team Queso, a lot of credit will fall in the lap of Mr. Keiko, but Dark Ghost has always been the cornerstone of their foundations, George. Without Dark Ghost, this team just does not operate, and right now, this team is not operating because Dark Ghost is not present.
That CC layering as well looked so good. I saw the Oblivion come down and was like, are they going to get hit by that? But they just walked away now. As the 1-pot reflex block, it was like, nah, I'm alright. Going to walk out of there and walk out on the Ion Cannon as well. Aeon's done such a fantastic job thus far. He's sitting at 2-0. Even Atfel's sitting at 2-0. He's got 3 items on the board. A little bit of defense as well to stop Mr. Keiko chunking him out, who's got 3 items himself. But his impact in these fights is so minimal right now because he's getting chunked out over and over again by the bad mojos, by the on point. You can see there another one hitting, taking him to under half HP.
Yeah, it's really good stuff coming out of the side of Calamity Reborn, and look at that. Wait
that
for
wait
it
for
does
it.
get blocked out, but Dark Ghost, sorry, Mr. Keiko is forced into his base, and he's even popped his flask to try and heal quicker, then sells it for an extra item. That's kind of clever. Just knowing that he's going to sell his flask, so he might as well get the healing out of it and get back into the action as quickly as possible. And it's very good timing because this gold miner has been started up by Calamity Reborn. Will they be able to spot it out? There is a flare in PRZ's inventory. No, they're too slow to the rotation. They were worried that they were going to get flanked, but you know that's what flares are for, to avoid that. Currently, Team Queso are scared of Calamity Reborn, and for good rights as well. Apfel has finished his item build, his offensive item build, that is, the Poison Shiv Sorrowblade Tornado Trigger. It's an interesting variant of the Vox build, but that's what makes Vox so fun, is that he can literally build anything and usually is pretty good with it. This reason is because Mr. Keiko is very unlikely to build armor. Dark Ghost won't build armor at all unless he decides it is absolutely necessary, and he's going to have to make that decision very shortly. And so because there's going to be 2 armorless opponents, being Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost, then by going Sorrowblade, you're getting the most auto attack damage as possible, which is great because auto attack damage without armor is going to chunk a lot. Then adding a Tornado Trigger, you're getting a second attack speed item to really get those damage out as quickly as possible, as well as crit to really punish the lack of armor on the side of Team Queso. This Vox is doing so much work. Aeon has been on point, and Ghost is just a monster that Team Queso is struggling to deal with. Ordains trap them up really make it difficult for Mr. Keiko or Dark Ghost to do anything in these team fights. And then, of course, the Fearsome Shades, once echoed, if he does build an echo shortly, is going to really hurt the Dragon Eye stacking of Dark Ghost, as well as just hurt the general damage output of Team Queso. A minute until this Kraken spawns. Calamity Reborn have controlled the pacing of this game so well. The 4,000 gold lead that they have could effectively be 8,000 at this point, Jaws, due to how far Team Queso are behind. However, good gauntlet positions, great ordains, and Mr. Keiko finding the damage he needs could turn this around. Team Queso just need to find the engage that they're looking for. They're just playing with such fear.
Aeon takes a lot of damage. Oh, that's the pot of the flask as well. This could be their time.
Oh,
comes
wow.
out, but it's blocked by the Fearsome Shades. Perfect timing coming out from Ghost. No echo needed, Dowsy. He doesn't need 2 of them when he can just do that. That stops PRZ's massive engagement. That's an 80-second cooldown versus Ghost's 50 now. This is absolutely massive for Calamity. However, their turret is going to get dived on. Wasn't too much of a surprise. It was fairly low. Anyway, Team Queso, they finally find a scrape and a way back into the game, but is it a little bit too late?
And like I mentioned, Mr. Keiko has a lot of damage, and look at the only member on Calamity Reborn who doesn't have armor, it's Aeon, so he is just taking the full brunt of this almost 4 damage item build Baron here. He just needs another 600 gold roughly at this point, and he will have his second monocle Jaws, and he'll be at full damage potential. And Aeon has only just picked up armor as we speak. And until it's a metal jacket, that tension bow is going to make it seem like it's nothing. And so, Team Queso finding a slight opening and a turret is great for them. The Kraken is now online, though. They cannot afford to miss position. PRZ needs to use his reflex block, his Crucible, essentially, prematurely, in hopes that Ghost throws out the Fearsome Shade to disengage the Arden. Starboy has shown us all how effective Batiste can be into Arden, because an Ordained and a Fearsome Shade can shut down his engaged tools, and you can't use items whilst you're in the animation of Gauntlet. It's why some people feel very frustrated with their Captain Ardens, because they never Fountain or they never Crucible when necessary. It's usually whilst he's in animation of one of his abilities, like Vanguard, like the Gauntlet, which have pretty long animation times. So makes things very difficult for PRZ. He basically has to predict that he's going to need to use a Crucible if he wants to Gauntlet. And if he predicts wrong and lands a Gauntlet, but the Gauntlet's not effective enough, it opens up Dark Ghost to so many opportunities to just stun up and fear up the team of Queso.
Yeah, that'll be Ghost, not Dark Ghost. It's pretty confusing, Dowsy. I do not blame you whatsoever. They're going to go for an engagement. There's the Gauntlet comes out. It hits this time. Iron Cannon as well. It's going to hit Aeon and Apple if they're not careful. Fearsome Shade, though, is going to send them packing for the time being. Ghost using that Crucible to get out of the way and get out of that Gauntlet. Calamity do manage to escape that, but 2 people were stunned in that Gauntlet, Dowsy. But Team Queso couldn't do anything about it.
They've won, though. Look at the health bars of Apple and Aeon. Both half HP. There is no dissuasion of fighting. The Fearsome Shade's been used. This is a free Kraken practically for Team Queso. It's going to be contested, of course, but Team Queso can re-engage. They've still got Oblivion available, and the Crucible was already used. Team Queso need to find a fight. But again, they fall back into their fearsome ways. Because of the fact Dark Ghost has only got 2 offensive items, and it's Eve of Harvest and Dragon's Eye, it means that the Samuel isn't actually being as effective as possible. Mr. Keiko is full damage build, and his damage build does hurt. Team Queso currently are playing with fear. It is something that can be punished very heavily. It's not the place to do so here in these promotion matches into the Vainglory8, because the Vainglory8 team is experienced in executing off fear here. Even in Europe, Calamity Reborn will pounce on a fearsome team. And so Team Queso, right now, with 15 seconds left on the Gauntlet, they are waiting for it to respawn so they can re-engage. There will be double Gauntlets available before there are double Fearsome Shades available. This is pretty big for Team Queso. Double CC for them. We'll have to see if they can make the most out of it. PRD's double Gauntlets have always amazed me, Jaws. Though, this is the moment that Team Queso have to land the engage that they can. But will they?
Well, You're going to have to be pretty fearful of Ghost. He is throwing out some mad shade right now. Team Queso have been interrupted multiple times with that fearsome shade coming into it. But, like you said, double gauntlet. How could you fail 2 gauntlets? Dowsy, question is you can't, unless PRZ does manage to whiff one. But we'll have to wait and see. You can.
Ghost can block the one, he can fearsome shade one, he can ordain the other. Like, there's many ways that Ghost can outplay PRZ. Batiste, one of the captain heroes that actually can stop both gauntlets coming through. Catherine would be another. Glaive with an Echo could be a third. There's only a limited amount of heroes that actually could stop both gauntlets with CC, and it's Batiste who can do it. So, man, there is ways that PRZ can be shut down here, if not just through a Crucible, but actually stunning it up. That's what makes this matchup so difficult for PRZ. He really has to feel it's the right moment.
Oh, Ghost has called their bluff. They are starting that Kraken, although Baron is fairly low. K-Call under at half HP now. It's going to take away those front camps in a couple of shots. Calamity now have shoved the wave here, Dowsy, so they do have this lane pressure and this lane advantage. However, it should technically slow... Oh, it's not even going to slow push. There's not even enough minions. Dark Ghost takes a lot of damage, and K-Call is going to have to back off even further, although taking that healing camp will make sure he's nice and healthy for the next fight. PRZ unlocks one gauntlet, unlocks the second. Ghost is just going to block it up. There's the Iron Cannon as well, but it wasn't enough to actually find anybody. Ghost fairly low. Atfel chunked out also, but same could be said for K-Call and Dark Ghost, who are fairly chunked out too. 2 big cooldowns there for PRZ used, and it's all up to Calamity now if they want to re-engage.
There's still the Oblivion to come out from Dark Ghost.
Yeah, well, they're going to go straight onto Dark Ghost right now. Did find the stun with the Ordain. Mr. K-Call's going to redirect himself towards the back line once to get near that Crystal Sentry. Maybe he can help them, because right now their health bars are blinking, but so is it Ghost and Aeons. Fountain did come out to heal Calamity. That rocket from downtown. All right, K-Call finds one. He should be able to clean up the rest. He finds the double kill, and now Atfel is standing in his way. Another jump jets to get along the bush. Finds the next kill. As a triple for K-Call and an ace. They only trade 1 for it, and that Kraken will be theirs.
Really impressive stuff coming out of Mr. K-Call. His positioning was perfect there, and Dark Ghost held on to that Oblivion until the very last moment and secured the kill onto Ghost, basically leaving Atfel to death. The Kraken will finally come out for Team Queso. Slow playing here. We can see the replay. First kill into Aeon. He was separated, very simple, but look at Dark Ghost. His positioning so good. There was nothing they could do here at Calamity Reborn. Mr. K-Call jumps out, but his range means he can easily take down Atfel way out of the team fight. And Team Queso with this Kraken now going to be unleashed. They're actually just waiting so that Mr. K-Call, if you go over to the turret, he's wanting the turret. Okay, he's not going to go for it. He decided not to go for it, but he was waiting for one Dark Ghost to spawn, but also there was the possibility that Mr. K-Call could actually take down the tier 2 turret before the Kraken was taken. It's a really intelligent move here, because it means they can make sure that this Kraken push is happening as a 3, and there is no chip damage to go into the Kraken before they start pushing here. Echo is still not finished for Ghost. He has 10 gold left. He's waiting at base. There it is. Comes on through. Double fearsome shades to come out of Calamity Reborn. Maybe could change the landscape of this team fight. We'll have to see. First turret should go down with ease.
And it should, especially with Mr. K-Call's damage right now. Like you said, full damage on his kid. Not too surprising. There's the first gauntlet. Dowsy. Atfel's going to block it up. Ghost using that fearsome shade. It's going to be blocked equally. PRZ hot on the fingers now. He's going to use that Crucible to make sure he gets out alive, and the rest of the team get out alive as well, forcing them to take another turret. Kraken for 2 turrets and opening up the base of Calamity. Thank you very much.
Did I miss something, Jaws, or did both gauntlets come out there? I don't think I saw the second gauntlet. Okay.
Oh, no, they didn't. No, I think he used Blood Brother, I think, because the cooldown's really low.
Yeah,
Blood, sorry, yeah.
Echo, if you miss time your Echo, perhaps you go Gauntlet Vanguard because a member needs a Vanguard really quickly, and then you use the Echo out of order, then you actually miss out on your double Gauntlet combination. So I think that's what happened with PRZ, but I have to admit I was watching a different part of the team fight and didn't quite keep an eye on his item cooldowns. 2 turrets though for Team Queso. That is fine. That is okay. It's not a game-winning push like perhaps you would praise a North American team for, but Team Queso have played on the back foot this entire game, so I will forgive them for perhaps not pushing to their limits here and really going for more. Wow, that's a breaking point now finished for Atful. He has subbed out the Poison Shiv, and I don't blame him. What are you really cutting down healing for in this team composition? I guess Dark Ghost can regenerate a bit of health with the Eve of Harvest, but Mr. Keiko's not regenerating anything. The only healing coming out is a Fountain, and yes, you can cut down Fountain's healing by 33%, but wouldn't you just prefer to stack up in a team fight and really have the best opportunity to take down a Baron? I know I would, and so Breaking Point's going to allow the Vox to stack up over the team fight, but he obviously has to survive as well, and that's pretty difficult to do against a Baron. So we'll have to see if he's able to make it work with his build here. He does have a lot of weapon powered damage, and of course the crit does help against the armorless enemies, but with the Breaking Point, his attack speed becomes even more of a vulnerable subject, and PRZ does have that Atlas, so if he fails to block the Atlas, then that is going to actually hurt him even more so than if he had the Poison Shiv in his inventory, just due to the fact that he has a Breaking Point. He now relies so heavily on his attack speed.
Well, he's picked up his own set of War Treads as well, has Mr. Keiko, to make sure his team can get out of any scary situation. So, I was going to say 3 sets of War Treads, but Dark Ghost hasn't actually upgraded his tier 3 boots just yet. Charges on the board of Apfel, and Aeon hasn't even picked up tier 2 boots, does he? He's satisfied with a single pair of tier 1 boots. Doesn't need it, you can imagine, just because he can Rose Offensive. He's got a lot of movement anyway. And now it is back to the Kraken dance as we commence PRZ and Dark Ghost trying to poke away, and Aeon sitting in the bush with Dark Ghost as Apfel takes his front healing camp. It's my favourite time of the game, Dowsy. You just get to sit back, watch the teams poke each other, and well, Calamity Reborn could hope Aeon actually gets a few on points down like that.
Gonna have to hit every on point at this point in the game. If you don't, Crystal Pile Black Feather is theoretically useless, but he's doing a good job of really chunking down the Baron before the team fight begins. However, if any damage does go down onto Ghost before this teamfight begins, then actually that's not great. If it goes down onto Aeon, it's not great. And look at Mr. Keiko, he is doing a lot of work.
He's doing a good job. First corner comes out, there's PRZ jumping forward. Massive response there, but Fearsome Shade onto Dark Ghost and PRZ. That's not going to be... Was that a double Fearsome Shade? I think it
double
was.
Fearsome Shade did come through,
yeah,
but the Crucible has just been echoed as well. So he can go in again.
Can re-engage. There he goes. Ghost is now trapped in there. Aeon's going to be able to use that Rose Offensive to get out. Mr. Keiko is on the right-hand side of the fight, meaning he can just spray and pray them down. They end up finding the ace. Team Cake, so now they should just be able to take the entire base.
PRZ's a genius, man. Holding on to that second gauntlet was so well played. Yes, the double Fearsome Shade come out of Ghost, but they used the Crucible and they could not escape that second gauntlet. It was such a great bait from Queso. They're going to take the Vein Crystal.
Yeah, it's going to fall. That's the first 2 turrets, and the Vein Crystal easily scratched off the base of Calamity Reborn. Team Queso, they're going to tie the series up 1 apiece.
Certainly do, Jaws, and I'm glad that praise for Team Queso's Captain PRZ and his gauntlet play on Arden wasn't misplaced. Like mentioned, he is one of the best Ardens here in Europe for sure. Has always been for this year in the Challenger League, and so I guess his Arden plays always looked even more impressive, Jaws, based on the opponents he was playing. But even against Vainglory8 talent, even against North American talent, his gauntlet play has been impressive, and in this game, it was definitely clutch to win the game.
And it was, and that was that. 1 apiece now, and Mr. Keiko shining stats as well, does he? 6-2-1 on that Baron, no Poison Shiv this time around. Full damage, is like we want to see. But we're going to chuck it over to the desk where Munch and Tasty can break it down even more.
Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, we are 1 apiece in this series now. Queso managing to even things up, and honestly, this was a similar game to what we saw in Game 1, except kind of a reverse scenario, where this time it was Calamity that had control towards the end of the game, and then Queso that were winning the late game team fights.
Yeah, a little bit of reverse, but this one makes a lot more sense on when you look at it objectively as well, because with this Baron composition that was built by Queso against the composition that was brought to the table by Calamity, you know, I said it after the draft, once it got to the late game, their ability to dive onto the Baron was going to be in question, and that was what ended up happening. They were trying to poke this Baron with the on points, but you know, if those aren't hitting every single time, and even when they are hitting, it still just isn't enough of an impact to really have the Baron ever be in any sort of threat. And we saw once the gauntlets come down, if there isn't an immediate response from the side of Calamity Reborn to try and dive onto that Baron, he's just able to jump jets out to safety, sit at a safe range, and output so much damage.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what we saw towards the later stages of the game. But to start things off, Calamity Reborn did a very good job of controlling that early game and getting the first few kills on the board. It was all about them to start this one off. It was later on that Queso managed to pull themselves back on it.
Yeah, early on, again, it's very difficult for Baron to be able to stick around in these skirmishes because when he does take any little bit of poke, it is that much more impactful. So you can see Mr. Kekel here, struggling to really be effective, even with a great gauntlet coming down to try and protect the turret. It's just not there. Then once the Rose offensive goes in, Mr. Kekel has nowhere to go, and he does trade one kill there with the team, but that's all they were able to get after losing a turret as well. So the fact that they didn't have that level of safety within their just the composition at that point was a great job by Calamity to try and take advantage of it. But again, just being unable to really push the issue hard enough.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, it was fairly short-lived. And then once we got later on into the game, we started to see Queso winning out these team fights time and time again. We can take a look at the first team fight that Queso managed to win for themselves, and you'll see it's a lot about just the damage that Mr. Kekel can deal.
And the damage and the positioning, again, look how far away from the team he is, but he's still putting out damage. No one from the side of Calamity can even think about getting in onto the back lines here, and he finds an opportunity, jumps on up, and takes out the Black Feather, who is their only option for trying to dive deep. And then it's just the Vox left all alone at the end of this one. He does a great job to at least trade one kill there, but that late in the game with how long the death timers are, two members being left alive are easily able to start up the Kraken, push in the lane, and find so much gold and objectives on the map.
Yeah, absolutely. Phenomenal job from Queso in that fight and for the rest of the game as well. We could take a look at the final fight that came through from Queso in the end as they managed to take away this game and even things up in the series. And they didn't even need to get a Kraken off this one. There was already so few turrets on the map.
Yeah, and just what a great decision by Queso to go for that fight. Earlier, we had already seen the first gauntlet get used. He echoed the gauntlet and then held on to it. This is what our casters were talking about. While that happened, you saw on the other side, on Calamity Reborn, Ghost used both of his fearsome shades just to try and get out of the first gauntlet. And so they just say, okay, we basically just won that trade. We can now sit back, start the Kraken, and the moment they get close, just throw that second gauntlet down and win the fight, because now so much of their utility was just used. So very smart play from Queso down the stretch. They had a better composition for the late game, and they played like they had a better composition in the late game.
Yeah, they played excellently across the course of that game and across the course of this series so far as well. Now, taking a look at the two games that we've seen in this series, it feels like Baron maybe needs to be a larger focus in these drafts, because across the course of challenge battles in general, we've seen every time we see Baron, it's had some major success. And if you're going to go late game every game like in this series so far, maybe Baron needs to be a priority pick coming into these drafts.
Either needs to be a priority pick, or teams need to focus on the picks that can deal with a Baron, the picks that can dive onto him. That was the biggest issue for me for the Calamity draft last game, was they had no way to deal with this Baron. There just wasn't anything in their composition that could contest the Baron once you got to the late game. And if you're not going to have something that can deal with Baron late game, you need to draft a much more early game focused composition and just try and win before you get to the late game. But the way that these teams have been going, every game it feels like has been going late recently. So I think you need to just focus on that late game. If you're going to let the Baron through, if it comes through, you need to have some way to dive onto it.
What are your thoughts about the Celeste ban that we keep on seeing during these drafts, though? Because that's been a first ban, although that has been, in fact, replaced by the Baron ban. So Calamity clearly not happy with the fact that Mr. Kekel was able to just decimate them during those team fights. And maybe that means that the Celeste might be seen, since that was a first ban in both of the previous drafts.
Yeah, well, it was a ban by Queso in the previous drafts too. So it was interesting that they were the ones that were taking that off the board. So maybe it will come out here. But the Lance, I like the Lance pickup just because I feel like Lance is probably right up there with Arden and Lyra in terms of the top captains of this update, because of the changes to the Echo makes his Githian walls that much more effective. But we're still going to see a Celeste man.
Yep, Celeste taken off the board there. So Queso just adamant that that is an incredibly high priority pick and not something that they want to find themselves up against. And now, with both teams of the game on the board, we're looking at essentially a best of 3 between the two teams. Either team could take this and qualify for the Vainglory 8 in just 2 wins. However, neither of them are going to go down without a fight. And this has been such a close series so far that I really don't know what direction this is going to be going in. Reza was banned though, and that means Vox is happy to be picked up here by Queso.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the respect bans come out. Reza has been banned every game by Calamity, whereas Queso has been taking this Celeste off the board every game as well. So definitely some, I guess, the comfort picks being taken away, the picks that they just know their opponents play well, and maybe they just don't know how to or can't play against at the moment. So interesting decisions being made, but with the Vox pickup, obviously a very strong pick. You can play into just about anything. You can play just about any team composition style with a Vox on your side. So now Calamity, they have a lot of decisions to be made. The Rona is still available. They could just go for a Rona pick, build this into one of those big brawling bruiser type compositions that we saw so prevalently yesterday.
Absolutely. It's going to be a Ringo locked in, actually.
Okay.
So not going for the Brawlers, actually just going maybe to try and out-duel this Vox during the lane phase.
I mean, historically, Ringo has done very well into Vox. He has the range advantage in the laning phase. It's just when he gets to the late game, the
0% win rate, boys and girls. I think it only got played like once or twice.
Yeah. But it's one of the situations where once you get to the late game, your ability to outplay an opponent is severely diminished as a Ringo, because you don't have, it's not about great mechanics. It's an ability that increases your attack speed and an ability that slows an enemy. That's really all you've got to bring out in the middle of a team fight. The Hellfire Brew, I'm wondering if this is going to be a Crystal Ringo, just because of the fact that they have the Kroll there. They could run this as a CP Ringo and just try and go for those huge ultimates. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do decide to build and play around this pick.
All right, we'll have to see where they go with that one. Apfel, known for his ability to play Vox, which is another stutter step heavy hero, so maybe that means it will be the weapon power. We'll have to see though. Blackfeather, once again, the last pick of the draft. It's something we're starting to see as kind of a theme here, that Blackfeather not willing to be a priority because of the Rona counter pick, but happily picked up as a last pick. But that is going to be the CP Blackfeather once again, coming out here for Team Queso. How does that match up into the Cruel, especially in the early game?
In the early game, it means that there's opportunities for this Kroll to really try and get a strong early game going, because the Blackfeather can't duel anywhere near as well when it is a Crystal Blackfeather early on. My biggest question coming into this one is going to be, what is the build path for this Ringo? Because if it's a Crystal Power Ringo, all of a sudden this Blackfeather, you can't target a Blackfeather with a Hellfire Brew. He's going to be able to just Rose Offensive it every single time. So it becomes very difficult in terms of who you choose. Obviously, the ults are pretty much going to go onto Vox every single time. And if he just gets a Slumbering Husk and a Reflex block, you've dealt with a Ringo, even with an Echo. So I wouldn't be crazy about seeing a Crystal Power Ringo. I do hope it ends up going weapon.
Yeah, I would expect that to be the case. We'll have to see if that's going to happen here. It's time to get into game, though. Hashtag Vainglory8 on Twitter. Let us know who you are supporting as we jump into Game 3 of this series. We're getting close to finding out who will make it into the Vainglory 8.
Thank you very much, guys. Here we go. Game number 3. Each team one apiece. This time it's Calamity Reborn's turn to jump over on the blue side and Team Queso on the red. And a pick we haven't seen at all in the VGL Dazzy in a long time is that Ringo.
Yes, and Apfel's going to be pulling it out on the stage here today. And there's a little bit of an inkling that he might go Crystal Power as well. He's currently got a Weapon Blade and a Swift Shooter in his inventory, but do not let that fool you. That is actually a fairly standard start for someone who might want to go Crystal Power, because you use the Weapon Blade and the Swift Shooter for your early clear. You go back to the first shop, and then you just sell the Weapon Blade, upgrade an alternating current, and you're good to go. So Apfel might just be fooling us all into thinking he's going Weapon Power. There's also the chance he goes Weapon Power. Weapon Power Ringo is really good into Vox, and with a Cruel, you basically isolate the issues of going double Weapon Power, because Cruel can build a Bone Saw as his first item. He also does a significant amount of Crystal Power damage anyways with his Smite. as does Apfel with his Hellfire Bruise. So it makes things a little bit difficult to optimize against. And if it is double weapon power, you might even see Mr. Keiko pick himself up an Aegis. It's something he did earlier on in this challenge battles against a double weapon power composition, and it was a bit surprising because it seems like Crucible would be a better item for the health that it gives you, and since you're not really against a crystal power source. But he talked to me about it earlier and afterwards, and he said, you know, I was against a Cruel and I was against a Vox. Resonance bounces do a surprising amount of crystal power damage. Cruel does a decent amount of crystal power damage with his smite, so the Aegis makes sense to me. So it's quite interesting when you get to get inside the idea, the mind of a pro player like this. And Mr. Keiko, like I've mentioned before, really has interesting builds, but also great justifications for them as well.
That's one of the reasons why I like watching Mr. Keiko so much, because he does come up with these more off-the-wall builds. Dark Ghost is getting aggressed on by Aeon, but PRZ should be here. That smite takes him way below a third HP, so Calamity Reborn are going to have to push in here, especially with Ghost hitting that level 2 also, because he spent a little bit of time in that lane soaking that experience. PRZ will be leading into a little bit of a troubling situation as Mr. Keiko does rotate a nice Vanguard, but Githia Maul and an Impale do land. This could be Aeon picking up first blood. He's trying to find it, does manage to secure it at least. Ghost has it with the last basic attack, although he's going fairly low now as well, having to wait on Ghost cooldowns. Another double Githia Maul onto Dark Ghost and Mr. Keiko. That smite for the heal, and Dark Ghost is running for the heals. Ghost is going to chase after him and pop that flash, but Aeon's trying to kill Mr. Keiko. Dark Ghost ends up picking up Ghost in the end, and that's another kill for Mr. Keiko as well. That first initial blood there, Dowsy, got turned into 2 kills for Team Queso.
Yeah, Apfel has rotated down to aid out in the fight. He's a little bit late, but what he can do is take away that Treant. It's going to give him the energy regen so he can go back to lane without missing out on too much. It also gives him an experience lead over Mr. Keiko. That Treant in the backs gives a significant amount of experience, and so what it gives him an experience lead over Mr. Keiko, but actually also gives Aeon an experience lead over Dark Ghost. So it's quite clever. He knew he didn't have time for the double backs. Yes, they're great for gold, but experience can be quite impactful as well. You can already see Apfel is level 5. Mr. Keiko is not even halfway there. Oh no, he is just over halfway there now. And Apfel will be hitting level 6 around the same time that Mr. Keiko hits level 5. So that's pretty big for Apfel alone, having that kind of experience lead. Dark Ghost is actually a whole level behind Aeon as well. And if Calamity Reborn can use this experience advantage that they've generated for themselves, then they are going to be in a great position. Look at that, Jaws. What's in Apfel's inventory?
Oh boy, he's going crystal power, like you called it. Aeon picking up weapon power, so at least they're splitting the damage in that regard. I cannot wait to see this. We haven't seen a crystal power Ringo in a fair while.
Apfel loves his crystal power laners. This meta for Calamity Reborn in 2.10 is so good because of the energy changes. It actually allows for crystal power laners to come back into play. So Apfel, with that in mind, is going to pull out a bit of crystal power Ringo. It's one of the heroes that most pro players are the most nostalgic about. Crystal power Ringo has quite a fun play style and has been out of meta for quite some time.
That's a fun play style. Aeon running down Dark Ghost. He was just waiting for him in the brush.
Boom, look at his Hellfire
for the longest time. Oh, Mr. Keiko. It's taking a large chunk, but PRC is there with a Vanguard to stave off the burning for now. But Aeon moving towards him. Apfel taking a couple of turret hits. Does want to have to back off. Don't want to go too aggressive, especially if Aeon doesn't take the turret aggro first up.
Yeah, and Ghost hasn't been to shop yet, so there's no fountain yet available for the side of Calamity Reborn, though Ghost should be able to pick it up in just a second. Alternating current comes online for Apfel, which means that he is opting in for a more attack-orientated build here. Jaws, suspect his second item would be a Shatter Glass, so that he can get as much damage out as possible with his Hellfire Bruise. Since the change in Frostburn, Jaws, you don't see Frostburn come out for these auto-attacking carries anymore, like CP Idris, like CP Ringo, because Frostburn now only applies with ability damage, and it's the first tick of ability damage as well. So abilities like Hellfire Brew will slow on the impact, but the burn damage, it will not. So Frostburn is basically useless on Crystal Power Ringo. It used to be an item you might go if you really want to just be obnoxious and auto-attack them to death, but in this current meta, you can't do that.
Boy, Impale does go a tad wide as Dark Ghost was actually waiting for them up in the bush for that engagement. Sends Atfel almost down to the grave, but was able to sustain up using that flask. Aeon came in as well. Didn't want to pop the From Hell's Heart just yet, however. Probably wants to couple it with Atfel's from Hellfire Brew, which will be up in about 5 seconds.
We'll have to see when that does come through, if it can be blocked up by Mr. Keiko, or if he goes for someone else who doesn't have a reflex block just yet. Dark Ghost, with his Rose Offensive, I believe, can block the impact of the Hellfire Brew, meaning that the burn effect doesn't come through. That burn does a lot of damage over time on the Crystal Power Ringo. But Rose Offensive doesn't actually block any damage, and so the big chunking Hellfire Brew will still do a lot of work here. Hellfire Brew is such a interesting ability due to its innate shield piercing that comes with it, Jaws. It means that, yes, you have to build Aegis up against it, but the Aegis actually doesn't do as much as you would hope for. And so there might actually be a call for Mr. Keiko to go Aegis Slumbering Husk, and even Dark Ghost to do the same. The only issue is that once 2 people do that, you lack the Atlas effect, which is just so important against Cruel, so PRZ definitely will have to have one of those own, but you see Dark Ghost has the armor, so he's going to get an Atlas for himself. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Keiko opted in for something like that. Get a Slumbering Husk as well as Aegis, just to try and save the amount of damage that the Hellfire Brew can output. Of course, if he does that, then Atfel will just stop using them on him. So there's always that twofold part of the argument. And due to Aeon's very aggressive weapon power build, Sorrow Blade first, it actually means you probably do need armor against this Cruel. Double Swift Shooter basically makes up more attack speed than a Blazing Salvo. It just bridges the gap that this Cruel needs to get those weakness stacks applied.
Oh, he got spotted though. He did walk over a scout trap. He's been sitting and camping in this bush for the longest time. He did take the front healing camp away, and that did allow actually Ghost and Atfel to push up the lane, because they kind of knew where Dark Ghost was at that point. They can kind of safely play around the fact and know that he is probably in that mustache bush. Mr. Keiko is going to back off, and it did pick up that monocle, so that's a first nice bit of crit on board. Goldmine is going to get started up. Gauntlet comes down. It's only going to stun Ghost, but now they are on the back. They are on Atfel, trying to use those boots to get away, but Ghost, or Dark Ghost I should say, is just too mobile, using that Rose Offensive to get on top of that Crystal Sentry as well, but Atfel manages to trade the kill. Ghost is now getting taken really low from Hell's Heart, gets perfectly placed. That reflex ball not quite timed well. Mr. Keiko gets a smite used on him, but he will survive for the time being. PRC uses that Crucible also, just to get a bit of shielding. Aeon, is he going to be able to catch him up? Although, probably shouldn't be able to at this point, especially as he's got that stunning zoom. Taking PRZ extremely low, however, but that Vanguard should lead him to safety. As I say that, the Impale does miss, so that'll be Calamity, just trading 1-for-1 at the moment.
Yeah, and they might re-engage here with Dark Ghost, so have to be careful.
Yeah, Ghost is going to go really low, but Atfel is going to be here. That's a big Githian wall, but he already just goes down. It doesn't really matter. Now Mr. Keiko is going to be the main target. They trade 1-for-1 again, and now is Atfel just trying to kite and duck and dip and dive and dodge away from Dark Ghost, but it just leaves Aeon and PRZ in a 1v1. A 1-for-1 turned into a 2-for-2.
Yep, a 3-for-3 in total, but a gold miner going over to the side of Calamity Reborn. So this is a massive win for them, and they're going to get a Crystal Sentry as well. Gold into their pockets, and Aeon made a very deliberate play there. Atfel got bursted, dived upon by a great gauntlet placement and aggression coming out of Dark Ghost and Mr. Keiko, but Aeon decided that he was going to commit to taking down that gold miner with Sorrow Blade and Double Swift Shooter. He has the damage to do it a little bit quicker than perhaps if he went Breaking Point or Poison Shiv or Tension Bow first. And so it allowed him to actually do that and then get into the fight just after Atfel died. And so all in all, even though the kills went even, objectives were won. 2 objectives for Calamity Reborn.
Atfel going really low. The Gauntlet's going to get unleashed. It's going to be able to stun up Ghost. He's just going to get run and gun down. Pretty easy kill for Mr. Keiko to clean up. He is now on 3-1, but they lose half their turret's life for it.
It feels bad, man. You make the players land. So I'm going to Githian wall the Gauntlet so that it doesn't stun my carry. Atfel, of course, used his reflex block in anticipation of the Githian wall landing on him, and then Ghost, because he repositioned the Githian wall backwards, just got hit by it immediately. So it was an attempt at a flashy play, Jaws, that unfortunately just fell short. and it was a kill going over to Team Queso, but they haven't got anything for it, so it's really pretty non-impactful at this point. Currently, the range game that comes out of a CP Ringo over the Vox is proving to be a bit difficult for Mr. Keiko. He's prioritized a crit build here, a breaking point monocle build. I'll be interested to see if he goes double monocle or builds a tornado trigger on 2.9. Going breaking point monocle tornado trigger was the most efficient build if you wanted that 3-item crit build with the breaking point, but in 2.10 the tornado trigger did get a 5% crit damage nerf, I believe it was, or crit strike. I forget the actual percentage, because they're two different things and they do different things, but it was a 5% nerf nonetheless. It is the monocle coming out, and that's what I suspected it would be. Just due to the tornado trigger change, I think it is no longer more effective to go that tornado trigger, and so we're back to the more standard double monocle breaking point build. We'll see if Mr. Keiko decides to go another offensive item. Could get himself a Poison Shiv, could get a Tornado Trigger, and he would be very much doing a lot of damage, but let us not forget that Aeon has a lot of damage with this Sorrow Blade breaking point, and so armor does need to come through, and an Atlas especially for Dark Ghost and PRZ.
You know, Dark Ghost working towards the Atlas, but feel like he needs to have the double gauntlets as well to just trap Aeon in place, as he doesn't even have his own reflex block at the moment, and there's no Crucible for Ghost either. So he's really up to the whim of CC at this point. Just needs to be able to dodge around it.
I can't believe I've not noticed that Dark Ghost is going weapon power. This is a double weapon power composition coming out of Team Queso. I just thought it was going to be Crystal Power, Black Feather. Very interesting call to do this, and very interesting to see that there's no Bonesaw on Dark Ghost either, and no Bonesaw on the Vox, so Mr. Keiko needs to get a Bonesaw. He needs to go full damage items and get a Bonesaw, or else they're just not going to have any damage.
I'm going to siege up this turret, and you can, yeah, I mean, you can sell the Book of Eulogies, I guess, and get something, but a Sorrow Blade might be more damage, the more damage that you need, so we'll see what Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost do want to itemize here. Dark Ghost looking towards some defenses, maybe an Atlas Pauldron of his own, for example. We'll have to wait and see. Apfel, mind you, has been stacking up, has even got an Eve of Harvest now as well for some regeneration, or sustain, I should say, in these fights. Calamity and Team Queso looking at even right now, Dowsy. Well, 13 minutes in with 0 turrets taken. Only half the turret damage on Team Queso's tier 1. Impale comes out from Ghost. He's just picked up his Echo as well, so he's going to have those double gauntlets available. But he's already dead because Team Queso just 3-man him, and there's no defenses, almost just ends up falling over.
He has defensive. He has an Atlas.
He's got an Atlas Pauldron.
It was his second tier 2 item. He didn't use Atlas. He didn't use his newly purchased Echo. He didn't use Fountain. Ghost just kind of, I don't know, figured he was dead before it started.
Angel's going to go for an engagement in a 1v3, and the gauntlet's going to come down as well, but it's going to get blocked by Apfel, and just leaves Team Queso with a good timing to take that turret instead, Dowsy. 14 minutes on the clock, the latest turret yet.
Yeah, mistake from Ghost just gives them the objective they want, and at this 14.5-minute mark, there is an argument to be made that they should push in for the gold miner, but they're not going to do that. This is a mistake by Team Queso, and they make this mistake so often, Jaws. They get a turret and then they leave their turret exposed, and so often Team Queso will lose their second turret just after the first turret, just after they secure their first turret. So poor rotation from Team Queso. Once more, unfortunately, being the bearer of bad news, they will just kind of give that gold swing back over to Calamity Reborn and make it nullified.
Yeah, Team Queso, that's the first turret take, turret take in the series so far as well. It's already been Calamity Reborn, but with it traded up, it was fairly close. Anyway, 15 minutes on the clock, however, and now it is time to do the Kraken dance. Piazzi still with no Echo on board. You can imagine that's going to be his next item he is going to work towards, but Ghost is falling so fast in this fight, so I might add, Mr. Keiko just making mean work of him. Boomerang blur straight on to PRZ.
Oh, this Hellfire Brew!
Mr. Keiko just gets destroyed in the back line. Apfel was winding it up while Aeon was doing the damage. The execution came in, and now Dark Ghost needs to find his way onto Apfel, but he's going to have to deal with that Lance as well, going extremely low. Does get smited away, and now it is Team Queso on the wrong end of the stick. PRZ is going to fall as well. That's going to be an ace to Calamity, and that Kraken is right at their feet.
Easiest team fight of Calamity Reborn's life in a competitive match right there. Everything went perfect around a Kraken of all things, Jaws. That is unbelievably great for Calamity Reborn. They get themselves a turret, they get themselves the ace, and now the Kraken will be unleashed by Aeon very, very shortly. And it all just went so wrong for the side of Team Queso. Mr. Keiko, due to the fact that Dark Ghost doesn't have Bonesaw, is forced to go a Bonesaw of his own or a Tension Bow. Likely a Bonesaw, so he gets the extra attack speed to make this crit build even more deadly. And it means he has no armor against a very intelligent cruel build in this scenario. Aeon, with the Sorrow Blade breaking point, is doing a lot of work. Because Atful charged up the Hellfire Brew from a bush and was out of range of Dark Ghost and PRZ, and PRZ was stunned up by a beautiful Boomerang Gauntlet, Boomerang from Hell's Heart. Mr. Keiko was just annihilated from the teamfight, and there's nothing that Dark Ghost can do on this very odd Black Feather build. Tension Bow Poison Shiv is just way out of meta, and it is not working for Dark Ghost at this point. This Kraken will find a turret. It's very likely that Calamity Reborn can just end.
There's another from Hell's Heart. Lands on Dark Ghost this time. Rose offensive away. PRZ gets his gauntlet blocked by Dark Ghost. Did Githian ward it away. Beautifully timed by Ghost. Even had that Echo on board. That Kraken opens up the base hit, Dowsy, and going to get a little bit of damage onto those crystal turrets.
Yeah, we talked about Lancers making the flashy plays, Jaws, and the previous Gauntlet attempt at a block that Ghost made was a death for him, but this time he blocks up the Gauntlet perfectly and just cuts down Team Queso's re-engage. The Kraken does get taken down, a 2-turret push in total for Calamity Reborn. They maintain their gold lead, and now they are looking for the push into the base. Bonesaw has been completed by Mr. Keiko, but Dark Ghost has just got the most ridiculously low Black Feather build that you can imagine. Poison Shiv is often an item that competitive players don't build on Black Feather due to the fact that they don't want massive amounts of attack speed on Black Feather, and Breaking Point is a core point item on Black Feather's kit due to its great synergy with his damage. He can stack it very quickly, and obviously once it's stacked, his abilities do massive damage as well. So it's very strange to see this build.
Well, they're going to go for another engagement. Aeon's already made his way to the back line, but Atfel has to deal with Dark Ghost now, but seemingly he can.
Really
Aeon
nice.
has that use that fountain on him, and there's the gauntlet. Not going to get blocked this time. Atfel gets isolated, tried to charge up the Hellfire Brew, but it was too little, too late. And Ghost, with that 3-man Githian, well, you're going to have to put out some more damage, my friend, to actually kill the rest of Team Queso. They find the clean ace.
That was really nice. Team Queso have learned from their mistakes there in the previous team fight, Jaws. The team fight that lost them the Kraken, well, they just allowed the dots to align. Dark Ghost wasn't able to get onto Atful, which allowed for the Hellfire Brew to out Mr. Keiko, and that Hellfire from Hell's Heart from the crew wasn't blocked, which just meant that Mr. Keiko was so much in trouble. This time, PRZ blocks the from Hell's Heart, and Dark Ghost immediately dives onto Atful. It basically makes it a 2 versus 1 on both fronts of the team fight, with the crew Lance trying to take down the Arden Vox, and then Atful left with the Black Feather to try and dance around the fight. And when he can't get his Hellfire Brew out, that's just such a massive part of his damage. And another fight coming out.
Yeah, Keiko was going to get jumped on once again. Aeon finding the fight. The Boomerang Surfboard wasn't even needed. Dowsy, it lands on PRZ this time, but Atfel charged up the Hellfire Brew and it landed again. Dark Ghost now with the 1v3 is going to help PRZ to actually take out the Ringo. Gauntlet's going to get used by PRZ to get a little bit of distance there. Aeon now trying to hunt down Dark Ghost. Should be able to find the kill, however. There he goes, running straight towards him. Ghost is going to be there as well. There's the Githian wall, and he is going to go down.
It didn't have his Rose Offensive available for him for another, it was about 6 seconds, and so because of that, there was nothing that PRZ could do. I don't think Team Queso actually want to be the ones aggressing a team fight, Jaws. I think they need to play a little bit more defensively. It worked so well when PRZ was with Mr. Keiko to allow him to get away from the crew, but this time PRZ wanted to try and go with Dark Ghost to get on top of Atful, and it just fell apart due to the fact that Aeon's doing so much damage, and with a Shiver Steel third item, there's nothing that Mr. Keiko can do to actually escape. This could be a Kraken still. 20% less health. Let's see if they can do it.
Yeah, Keiko is going to dive straight on top of it, but here comes Atfel just storming in,
dear.
and Keiko gets disintegrated almost. Aeon jumping on him. Gawler's going to come down and separate him, but the Hellfire Brew and the Surfboard landed anyway. The From Hell's Hearts are so good from Aeon right now, and PRZ just watches his carry fall as well as that Kraken. Kraken now on board for Calamity.
Yeah, Team Queso felt such desperation in that moment, Jaws, to steal the Kraken away, and Calamity Reborn kept their calm about them. Aeon and Ghost with the disengage meant that the Kraken was not low enough to be stolen away and allowed for Apfel to re-engage the fire, and then they just take down Mr. Keiko. The Kraken, and this is the last hurrah for Team Queso. If they are unable to find the team fight win for themselves, and this Kraken will just take the game. Going to be very hard for them to do so. Dark Ghost as well. He's getting a bone saw for himself. Oh man, you aren't able to stack armor breaking items. Very unfortunate build from Dark Ghost here, realistically, on this Black Feather.
Now one step closer to the VG8 Dowsy. The gauntlet first one comes out from PRZ. That Impale is going to land on Dark Ghost, but the Hellfire Brew is going to get charged up. It's going to get blocked, and Black Feather's already managed to dispatch of Atfel. And now it's Aeon alone in the base with that Kraken just buying time, mind you, Dowsy. This turret is about half HP. Does end up getting killed by Mr. Keiko, but the damage, it seems, has already been done. 40-second death timers on the side of Calamity Reborn, and Ghost is just, again, buying time. First turret's going to fall. He's going to fall as well. The ace comes through from Team Queso, but that Kraken might just damage that crystal enough. 40-second death timers, I don't know. They're going to have to try.
What is PRZ doing? He's going back in to get a contraption. Team Queso seemingly don't want to make the risky move. By the time they get to the enemy base, Apfel spawns, but he will be spawning into a 3 versus 1, and the Ringo doesn't want to be in range. So there was an argument to be made that Team Queso could have rushed into the enemy base, tried to burst down a turret, and just dealt with Apfel. If Apfel then died, then look at the death timers. Everyone is so staggered. Aeon would spawn as Apfel died. Aeon, a cruel, can't do anything against 3, and by the time the game was finished, Ghost would be joining the fight. So, I don't know, Team Queso could have made the plucky, courageous decision, but instead decided against it. And now one of those crit items has been sold for a poison shiv. Seemingly, Mr. Keiko believes that Aeon's self-regeneration is too much to deal with, and Apfel with the Eve of Harvest as well, although never in these team fights has Mr. Keiko been able to land any auto attacks onto Apfel, apart from perhaps at the very beginning. So I'm not sure if the Poison Shiver is realistically needed. They have been doing just fine when PRZ kites back with Mr. Keiko to win these team fights. A change of plan from Team Queso in the last minute. Hopefully it's the right call from Mr. Keiko. I can't really say it is until I see it.
Well, now it's going to be a dead even heat. Nice Lithium Wall actually onto PRZ. Double Lithium Wall, in fact. Atfel is going to charge up that Hellfire Brew. It's going to land, but will it be enough? Aeon's already on the back line. Fountain used on Mr. Keiko, but the smite kills him. Gauntlet comes down from PRZ, and now it's Atfel versus the world, and they do manage to take him out. PRZ is going to be the last member alive, takes out Atfel in the end, but his carries are already dead. And now it is Aeon versus the Crystal. This will be Calamity taking game number 3.
Game number 3, the second point they need. One more and they will be back in the Vainglory8. Calamity Reborn have played so well in this game, but I have to say Team Queso are feeling the pressure, Jaws, so clearly. Often their item builds are adventurous, Jaws, but not bad, is how I would put it. But here, there was just so much wrong with what happened. Dark Ghost trying to build 2 armor-piercing items, eventually did just sell that piercing spear for a heavy steel to go towards the breaking point, but realistically, he should have just gone for a more traditional Black Feather build to begin with. Mr. Keiko selling that poison shift, I didn't feel it was the right call, and you just saw he didn't have the damage to deal with that cruel. He would have been better selling one of those monocles for armor, if anything, if you wanted to try and survive cruel better. Team Queso, I think, lost their wits at the end of that game, Jaws, and that is something Calamity Reborn will pounce upon.
Well, like you said, they are one more game away of achieving the dream. But there's 2 dreamy guys over on the desk, and they can break down this Calamity win even more.
tell you what, being on the desk is my greatest source of compliments because every caster seems to just say nice things about us when they throw. Thank you very much, Josh. Yeah, we are on the desk. 2-1 now is the scoreline in favor of Calamity. I have to say, much more bloodthirsty game coming out from these two teams here, but still kind of a messy game and very much comes down to these late game team fights once again.
Late game team fights and the late game decision making. I mean, I'm gonna once again be mirroring what our caster said because they made such great points about the itemization. And I'm going to just kind of add on to it a little bit with the Blackfeather build in particular, going for the build that he chose with the Poison Shiv. The only person that the Poison Shiv is built for in this game is to stop some of the lifesteal coming out from Krull. But Blackfeather's job, every single team fight, was to get onto the Ringo and try and take out the Ringo. There's nothing that you need to be worrying about in terms of the lifesteal on Ringo that heavily. And so the Poison Shiv makes no sense to me in this late game build for a Blackfeather. Like the fact that he didn't have a Poison Shiv didn't have a breaking point, cost them so much damage in the late game.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, it did mean that in the late game, they ended up losing out on this one. Let's take a look at some of the replays from that one, though. Starting off with an ace that came out from Queso when the builds were working a little bit better earlier on.
Yeah, this was before that it was, we were at a point where the scaling was absolutely required. They were able to jump onto the Ringo and take him out before he actually got the ultimate off to get that massive burst of damage. And, that's the thing about the CP Ringo is if you don't get that ultimate off, then you have contributed almost nothing to a team fight. But it was just at that point in time, Queso knew what they were win conditions were. They knew what they were trying to do. They were still, I was questioning the builds even that early in the game, but they were at least able to find their targets and take them down.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw that Queso, they managed to win another fight a little bit later on, but this was after they were starting to get sieged by Calamity Reborn. Calamity got themselves a Kraken, started to push in, trying to end the game here, but Queso managed to hold on at least for now.
Yeah, it was just a little bit of a hold, but again, look at the way that this fight ends up breaking down. You have Blackfeather jumping onto the Ringo, and he's taking so long. If this is a breaking point Blackfeather, he comes out of this kill on Ringo with at least 10 stacks of breaking point and then can rejoin the fight and find the rest of these kills so much quicker. Takes down the Ringo so much quicker, maybe even gets the Ringo before he gets the Hellfire Brew off, but because of the fact that he didn't have that build, it took them a very long time to even finish off those kills, and it allows Calamity to then finish off that final turret before they go down. And because of that amount of time, again, now all of a sudden, despite the fact that you have almost minute-long death timers, they can't just go and push in and end the game themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Queso managed to hold on in that situation, but unfortunately, they couldn't hold on that much longer, and they were starting to get to a point where these team fights weren't working out. Then our final fight was a huge battle in the lane, and this was where Appel managed to survive long enough, managed to get his ultimate off, and that was kind of curtains here for Queso.
Yeah, this was a great Githian Wall stun. As soon as Blackfeather went in onto Ringo, the Githian Wall stunned him up. That bought the time for the Hellfire Brew to come out and just chunk down the multiple members of the side of Queso. A big From Hell's Heart did end up getting blocked, but again, when the block is used on the From Hell's Heart, then all of a sudden there's so many opportunities for the Lance to make plays with the Impales and with the Githian Walls.
Yeah, absolutely. See Aeon obviously happy to just run over and end the game at that point. So that was Calamity managing to take advantage of a mistake coming out from Queso. And that meant that they could end the game right then and there. And that's one of the things in both of these games we've seen. These late game mistakes lead to their opponents taking advantage and finishing out the game. So now we are at a 2-1 scoreline in favor of Calamity. They are on the brink of making it back into the Vainglory8 right now. Queso maybe need to book up their ideas. They want to push this to 5 games, but they still have to get 2 back-to-back at this stage to be able to take out Calamity Reborn. This is starting to get dicey for any Queso fans out there. Obviously, they still have another lifeline. This is the upper bracket in the tournament, so neither of these teams will be knocked out if they do lose the series. But they don't want to play another series. They don't want to go against Clash.
It's much better to just have your Vainglory8 spot solidified and secured than to have to go through another best of 5 to have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be jumping on into game number 4 next. So how do things need to change in this draft? Or do things need to change in this draft? Because honestly, I feel like the weakest part of the draft, in my opinion, was the CP Ringo. But that was what won, and it worked out for them.
Yeah, nothing in these drafts has to change. These games have not been won or lost in the draft phase. Most games are not won or lost in the draft phase. It's just about giving yourself the best chance to win through the draft. It's all been about the in-game execution and the decision-making, especially with regards to some of the builds that we've been seeing throughout this series. I would like to see these teams kind of shore up that decision-making, especially as we get towards the late games. And, I mean, whichever team executes more efficiently in the 20-plus minute portion of the game, they're the one that's likely going to be getting the victory.
We'll see if they can get themselves that victory. Krull was the first man, Lyra second. Then Queso going to lock in that Arden for themselves to round this one out. This is what PRZ has been playing a lot across the course of this series, and just in general, it's something that he's known for. The gauntlets can be incredible. But already, Calamity Reborn locking in a lance and banning away the Baron. They very clearly have a plan coming on into this last draft.
Yeah, and the fact that they ban away the Lyra on B side just shows that they are more than comfortable to play this lance pickup, because otherwise you only ban away the Lyra if you want the Arden yourself. But if you have the someone who can play the lance and are comfortable with the lance pick, then you can just ban away the Lyra. Your opponents are likely to take the Arden, you get the Lance, and both teams end up being happy with their first picks. But we do get that Celeste ban once again, so still not going to get a chance to see, if who it is on the side of Calamity that runs the Celeste. I mean, Apfel and Aeon, I feel like both have played the Celeste in the past and have played it quite well, so maybe it's just because both of them have played it that they've been banning it away. Either way, it is going to be the Vox once again. Vox has been pretty much, I believe, in every single game this series. Yep. It's going to be a very prominent pick on this update just because he's one of those heroes that, there isn't a whole lot that counters him, and he's not necessarily a hard counter to a lot of different things, but it's just a very stable, consistent laner.
Yeah, absolutely. A safe pick and something that these guys love to play as well. We've seen K-Cool and Apfel both succeed on that in the past. Apfel, especially back when he was in the Vainglory8, had a huge amount of success on Vox specifically. But now Queso, with 17 seconds on the clock, have to decide what direction they want to go with this composition. And apparently Sky is going to be the answer still, cognizant of that Rona pick each and every single draft.
Yeah, the Rona pick always has to be in the back of your mind. And obviously the Sky pickup is one that you pick as a counter to the Rona, but you can also just pick it into anything, like just as a standard pick. But they do finally get their hands on this Reza. This was something that had been banned away from them in the previous 3 games of this series, or previous, 3 games of the series. But it was something that Calamity had been very concerned about. They didn't want to let Dark Ghost get his hands on that pick. But now it will be coming through. We'll have to see if Calamity does have an answer for it. I think you want something that can be very strong early on so that you can duel out the Reza, maybe win the jungle early. Something like a Rhyme or an Alpha I think would actually be very good into the Reza, but you then also have to keep in mind that the Sky is still there.
Absolutely, they do need to be careful of that Sky. Looks like it will be weapon power in the lane though, going up against the Vox. And we'll see what Calamity wants to take going against this Reza. I mean, Blackfeather is still available, but they are going with the Alpha as the final pickup of this draft. This is going to be the first time we see Alpha in this series, but that is a pick we've seen Aeon play in the past.
Yeah, and the Alpha pick makes a lot of sense here because, again, you want to be able to beat this Reza early on. There's one of the things about the Reza pick is it has early game strengths, but it's not as strong as other early game heroes. Once it gets that aftershock and is able to start taking objectives and finding fights, has so much burst damage. But Alpha is very strong against burst, initial burst. And then she also has so much on-demand damage at the start of the game as well that she can invade and steal camps away from this Reza and just shut it down. That's one of the things we've seen time and time again in the Vainglory8 is these Reza picks, when they come out, they just get completely shut down in the early game, and it takes them a few minutes longer than their counterparts to get to that aftershock, and by that point, it's too late.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see if that is going to be the case in this game as well, because, being able to get ahead on that Reza, if you do get ahead, you can do some serious damage. It's time to get into this one. Hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know who you are supporting, because Queso are against the ropes right now. Calamity are a single game away from the Vainglory8. Let's get over to our casters and get into game number 4.
Thanks, guys. Here we go. Calamity. Are they going to make Swiss cheese out of Team Queso? We'll have to wait and find out. They are 2 games up, meaning match point in this best of 5. Team Queso are on the ropes, and if they're not careful, Dowsy, they'll get pushed straight into the Greater.
Yeah, Calamity looking reborn right now, revitalized, especially Jaws, here on 2.10, bottom of the litter in the European Vainglory 8, but right now they have taken it to all challengers and are really looking pretty strong. This is Apfel's meta, I think. Vox, always been a strong pick for him. Vox isn't too bad on 2.10, does have some counter matchups for sure, but also the crystal power laners that can come out if necessary are great as well. And Aeon loves his alpha pick, and alpha's pretty strong on 2.10 as well. So Calamity Reborn have compositions or that is comfort picks for them, but let's talk about this Reza that Dark Ghost has been wanting to play all series long, has been banned against him. And what can do, it can really make Apfel's life a misery when paired with this gauntlet play that PRZ has always been pretty good at, and with this weapon power Sky that Mr. K-Cool has picked up. Mr. K-Cool's weapon power Sky is pretty strong, and Mr. K-Cool will be able to kind of dive onto Apfel with the Reza, with the Arden, and Apfel will find it very difficult to kite away. It's kind of a similar composition, Jaws, to what they did in Game 1 with their triple melee composition, which was all about diving the Fox and eliminating him from the game. Well, the win condition is pretty similar here for Team Queso here. Because of their hero picks, they can do the same. However, when you have an alpha against you, it's always makes things a little bit tricky, because alpha's very good at dealing with divers, and so you often have to focus the alpha even if you don't want to.
Well, he's getting focused right now. Dark Ghost taking a quite large chunk of HP. PRZ is going to rotate, however, but Aeon seems undeterred by this, as he knows he has Ghost on the sidelines in the wings. Prime Directive doesn't quite connect. Actually popped his flask in the small engagement as well, where Dark Ghost popped his also. And now PRZ taking rather large beating here as well, and is forced to pop his also. That'll be Calamity taking quite a big aggressive lead, something that Reza isn't too fond of, especially when you've got an alpha beating on your jungle, and she's going to be able to take out a tree empty.
Yeah, Alpha in the early game is difficult for Reza to deal with. Alpha pretty much trades very well into any jungler at this point in the game. Towards the late side of the game, though, Dark Ghost will have enough burst damage to actually deal with the Alpha and can be quite impactful. I can see these late game team fights forming already. Jaws, you know, PRZ diving in with the gauntlet, Aeon frontlining, Mr. K-Cool stacking on him, and then actually, with the help of Dark Ghost, they take down the Alpha, they kill her in a reboot protocol, and then try and get onto Ghost and at full straight afterwards. I think that's most likely how these team fights play out if Team Queso are to win them, but quite equally, Aeon can actually do a lot of work, especially if he starts getting snowballing, and Apfel as well is always going to be able to dish out the damage if he's unfocused in these team fights. And so Mr. K-Cool has to be a little bit careful. A misstep from Mr. K-Cool, a route like such that we just saw from Ghost, allows Aeon to do so much burst damage, follow up with a core charge or one of those prime directives. And if any prime directive does land onto Mr. K-Cool, then the amount of damage that gets issued onto him is quite devastating to this weapon power Sky. So it's very important that Mr. K-Cool is sidestepping any engagement that can come out of Ghost or Aeon.
Jumping into a brief pause as we do sort out a couple of issues. I'm sure they won't be too long, but it just gives us a bit more time to break down this crucial game. Dowsy, obviously Calamity are 2-1 up, match point at the moment as well, and Aeon already taking a rather commanding lead in the jungle, just forcing away Dark Ghost. But how is Aeon really going to act in these team fights? Because realistically, you're going to want to be able to kill Mr. K-Cool, but Mr. K-Cool is so mobile on this weapon power Sky, it's going to be hard for him to pin him down. But if they do, she's going to die very, very quickly, and it's going to be up to PRZ ready to kite for her. But that's the same that could be said for Ghost and Apfel. He's going to want to be able to kite for Apfel, because if Dark Ghost gets his hands on him, he's also going to die rather sharpish as well.
Well, this is the thing, is that Reza, yes, he can dive over the front line to get onto the Vox, but he's up against a Lance and an Alpha as well. So you think about it, Lance, once he gets that Echo online, is actually going to shut down Dusk Ghost's engage and chase potential on Apfel quite heavily. Impales, double, Giphy and War, and then Aeon just beating on him, stacking up theoretically a Dragon's Eye second item as well as his Call Charge. So Dark Ghost kind of, whilst he wants to focus Apfel, depending on the terrain for the team fight, might not even be able to do so because of such the CC and great burst melee damage coming out of Calamity Reborn. And such is the case that whilst you want to try and focus down Apfel, you may be forced to go for it on first. And this is quite often the case when Alpha is on your team, that she kind of becomes the focal point of a team fight, even though you may have higher priorities, such as this Vox, because you can't really ignore her as much. The other point is that Mr. Keiko might dodge every Prime Directive Jaws, and on a Sky, I guess in theory he probably should. There's always those unfortunate moments where you series strike behind a teammate, and then your teammate gets hit by the Prime Directive, and because Prime Directive puts you behind your opponent, then Alpha is back on top of the Sky. So whilst Mr. Keiko is very mobile, Arden isn't. Reza, I suppose, is, and so this is kind of the issue that Sky has, is that she has to position in such a way that not only is she dodging out Alpha, but she is also dodging out her teammates as well.
Doesn't like one of the players had to reboot their device to give you a small update. Should be back rather soon, so no need to worry. It's not like an internet outage or anything. We'll be back into the game momentarily. But yeah, going on that, Dowsy, I mean, it's going to make Dark Ghost's decision-making and Aeon's decision-making as well pretty crucial in these team fights. Obviously, as you can imagine, being the junglers, are they going to prioritize any early defense in that regard as well to make sure Aeon, for example, can stay alive up against Mr. Keiko? Because we do normally see something like a Dragon's Eye being built first or second item on something like an Alpha just to sustain that damage, and because you're constantly in the fight anyway, it's going to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, we should be getting back into game now. Unpause comes out. One of the members of Calamity Reborn obviously had an issue, but they have resolved it. And such is the game continues. We are 4 minutes in Jaws. Gold is obviously dead even. There hasn't been a first blood. The items are still yet to come through, the tier 3 items. It's a neck and neck race. Aeon just slightly beating out Dark Ghost at this point in the game towards his Aftershock. So we'll have to see if that is anything to talk about. Apfel's also been able to go back to base to pick up a Heavy Steel and the Blazing Salvo, which means he's going Breaking Point first, may even go towards a crit build on this Fox like Mr. Keiko did in the previous game. I think the Breaking Point Double Tyrants Monocle build is pretty fine this update. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Apfel opts in for something like this, just so we can kind of match the good weapon power damage that this Sky is going to be outputting, and kind of chunk down this Rezo, who's relatively squishy until he gets some major offensive stats on. Mr. Keiko on this weapon power Sky wants to go a Breaking Point crit build as well. Sometimes you would see a Poison Shiv first or second item if the healing on the enemy team is pretty impactful, but as such there is no Lyra, so Mr. Keiko is going to go for that crit. We do see the Aftershocks have been completed for both junglers now. Everyone has hit major power points where they can start to get these team fights. Even we got Fountains online as well, so expect some good team fights.
Yeah, Dark Ghost can be a real troublemaker when he gets up into the lane. After takes a large chunk of damage, you know, I'll work him in, Dowsy, I'll work him in. But now Team Queso rotating down, and one little play Aeon was actually doing a second ago, Dowsy, I wanted to point out, was the fact that he was actually sitting in the tri-brush of Team Queso, just waiting for them to go for a rotation down to this jungle shop and maybe try to catch one out, but spotting, obviously, that wasn't going to be the case. His team rotated down, actually secured themselves a couple of items, and noticed that the entirety of Team Queso actually backed in that time. So knowing that timing was extremely important for them, which enabled them to get priority in the lane as well. Small kerfuffle in the lane, however, as Dark Ghost goes straight onto Aeon. Termination Protocol does land, and Dark Ghost going extremely low, but Aeon's going to activate that Termination Protocol to actually stay alive at this point. Pops into the Infinite Reboot, but Dark Ghost goes straight on top with him with the Nether Form. Does pop up out of it, but he's very low. Even the Fountain won't save him now. Dark Ghost picks up the kill, and that'll be first blood to Team Queso.
Yeah, and this is the thing that despite being in a 1v1, Alpha really good into Reza. In any 1v1, a Reza will pretty much lose to an Alpha. In a team fight though, Reza is able to burst her, which is super useful when she's in her reboot protocol, and super useful afterwards as well.
Oh, they're going really deep on this turret, and Dark Ghost had to hightail it out there with the help of a Vanguard, actually, as Aeon has respawned. Obviously, no ultimate available. Up in about 30 seconds' time. Team Queso, relentless assault on this turret now. Did manage to take it just over half HP, so not too bad at all after one pick. And speaking of picks, that's a nice impale, but wait for it will come out just to dissuade Team Queso for any meaningful engagement. Even the death from above, just to make sure.
So there's 16 seconds, 10 seconds on this fountain. Oh, and there it is. Team Queso recognize this lapse of power and they want to fight.
Yeah, Dark Ghost going extremely low though. Aeon did connect a prime directive, but that Vanguard from PRZ keeping him alive. Then form detonation straight underneath the turret, and that is a the termination protocol activated just in time, and that'll be Atfel picking up 2 kills. Dark Ghost and PRZ took too many turret hits, and they end up going down. So restrike from Mr. Keiko to get over the wall, but Aeon should just be able to chase this one up, but then well timed. Actually, death from above will make sure he doesn't go down just yet, but Atfel comes up big in that fight.
Yeah, I'd really like to see a replay, actually, of that team fight and that dive from Team Queso, because it went so horrifically wrong. And I believe it was due to the way that the turret was aggroed. Oh dear, Mr. Keiko is very low and will fall to Ghost. Caught out in rotation, and that is the 3 kills going over to Calamity Reborn off a pretty unfortunate tower dive. Team Queso were right in going for a turret dive there, Jaws. They had ultimates available on Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost. The fountain was there. Ghost was super low and his fountain wasn't quite available. And PRZ was just so close to getting Gauntlet. In fact, unlocked it during that team fight but didn't use it. This went wrong.
Atfel, it's going wrong for Atfel now as well, as Dark Ghost used another Netherform detonation. It's such a short cooldown on such an impactful ultimate. And yeah, fountain usage as well coming through for Ghost, just to make sure he keeps himself alive, or keeps his carry alive as well, more importantly I should say, Dowsy. Team Queso are going to siege up this turret, and that's going to go down in a flash.
Yes, it does 4. Team Queso secure it. Basically what they would have attempted to do if their turret dive hadn't gone so horrifically wrong. And here it is, the replay, I believe, coming on out. Dark Ghost finds Ghost very quickly in the team fight. It is actually the turret focusing PRZ as expected, but I think Dark Ghost dives on in and takes the turret aggro straight away. Oh, it actually is PRZ. Oh, the termination protocol, there it is. Okay, so that's where things went wrong. You called it correctly, Jaws. It was just Aeon, a massive termination protocol burst whilst they were too low. PRZ never used the gauntlet to kind of create any space, even though we had it unlocked the whole time, and because of that they couldn't kite back out of range of turret, and Team Queso kind of just disrespected that termination protocol coming out. Another pause will come through. Suspectively, Calamity Reborn's issues haven't been resolved, but we don't know that for sure, so we'll wait on word from our production team if we are to find that information out. Either way, we are at 9 minutes 33 seconds. And so this is the beginning of the mid-game, you could say, Jaws, of this game here. And a single turret has been taken. Team Queso are kind of just a little bit ahead. 1,300 gold ahead as far as gold is concerned. But when you look at the items that have been built, Mr. Keiko has a whole component over Atful in their crit build, which means he is doing far more damage than Atful. And this is due to the fact that Atful has prioritized movement speed over crit here. He's upgraded his tier 1 boots to those tier 2 boots to try and kite Dark Ghost better on this Reza. And so far, this allows Mr. Keiko to get an effective damage increase over Atful. And so whilst Dark Ghost might not be able to stick to the Voxes easily, Mr. Keiko on this very mobile Sky probably can stay in range with the help of Series Strike and her passive, which allows her to dance around the team fight. And Mr. Keiko will be able to kind of help with that. Not to mention, PRZ has actually just completed an Echo. He's got only used one gauntlet. No, I don't think he even has. He's not used a gauntlet yet, Jaws, and he's got an Echo now. So this is kind of the point we're at, is the next team fight, PRZ's Gauntlet, which has not yet had impact on this game, is going to obviously suddenly have impact, but only that, it's going to be 2 of them, and that's probably going to be a bit of a surprise, unless someone's kept tabs on the item builds, and I suppose you can do so now that you're in this pause, have a quick checkup of what everything is going. That Echo, very early for PRZ, we'll have to see what kind of impact that can make, because this should allow, actually, for Dark Ghost to chase down Atfel a bit easier, Mr. Keiko to chase down Atfel. And whilst they haven't been able to kill him yet, the kind of switch of focus to Ghost and Aeon has allowed them to win team fights. But now they might actually just be able to take out the major damage source, which they feel is this box.
Yeah, Dark Ghost is dispatching him fairly quickly when he does get his hands on, just because of the time in the game we are at, does he? Like you said, only 9 minutes. He has Aftershock. He's even got a bit of shield piercing as well. He is deleting him pretty quickly. That shielding he's got in his inventory, yeah, it's pretty much nothing and nullified at this point in the game. And even with those Netherform detonations, they are very short cooldowns, like we mentioned earlier on in the game, meaning he can just pop them time and time and time again, dodge out some CC and get a nice chunk of burst damage as well. Dark Ghost doing a good job thus far with those 2 kills. Did overstep a little bit earlier, like we mentioned, with Atfel picking up a 2-piece of his own, but infusions have even come out from Keiko and Atfel themselves, none on anybody else. They don't want to pick up them just yet, but this signals that they want to fight. But right now, if they don't know PRZ's got that Echo, they definitely don't want to pop that infusion unless they see the fight turning in their way, because that is going to be so big, because Atfel doesn't have reflex block. There's no reflex block on Aeon either, and there's no Crucible on Ghost. In fact, there's no reflex block on him either. So double gauntlet with no reflex blocks on the board, Dowsy. How does that end? I'll tell you how. It ends pretty badly for Team Queso.
Yeah, you've called
Calamity,
it perfectly. Yeah, Calamity. Yeah, that'd be amazing if double
Pretty
gauntlet.
bad for Team Queso with double gauntlet. Yeah.
Pretty bad in the sense that they win a game. Way, that's obviously not bad. I don't know, man. This is a huge power point for Team Queso. Like you mentioned, there are no reflex blocks across the board, and there is no Crucible, and there's now double gauntlet. So this is exactly why PRZ has rushed the Echo as his second item. Kind of just looked at the items purchased, noticed that there's shielding, noticed that Aeon is rushing into damage, and I suspect Team Queso will be looking for a team fight of their own very quickly, almost instantly if they can do so. Broken Myth has been finished, so that that tiny light shield that Atfel has is meaningless. Here they come! Can they land the gauntlets, and will they dive the turrets? How far do Team Queso want to push their limits? Because this is so big, they can't really afford to allow reflex blocks to be purchased, or else they lose out on so much potential in this match. This midpoint game is where games are won. Currently on 2.10, especially in regions where teams are so good at taking stuff on the map. And look at this, Team Queso just moves straight into the enemy jungle. They go, you don't want to fight us. There's no way you want to fight us right now. We have double gauntlet, you have no reflex blocks. That's 3 objectives for Team Queso. But they need to find a team fight so that they can get even more gold miners and turrets, or else reflex boxes will come through swiftly, and perhaps that bit of power that they suddenly have is lost entirely.
Well, you feel they just walk towards them, just tap in the direction of Calamity Reborn and just make them run away, because they are aware now. You can imagine that PRZ has got that Echo. But right now, or they start the gold miner, go, okay, so we're going to stick Dark Ghost and K-Call on the gold miner. PRZ is going to sit in your tri-brush, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it because I've got double gauntlet, and have fun with that, by the way. No reflex box just yet, like we said. I mean, Calamity, maybe they're playing a bit too aggressive here, Dowsy. PRZ could just click the button. I mean, Dark Ghost is wandering up from lane. Calamity, luckily enough now, just backing off. But just pick the 2 buttons, man. That's all I'm saying.
It needs to be now. Pull the trigger whilst they walk towards shop. Catch them off guard. Or else...
PRZ used boots as well, mind you. He used his boots to actually come back to the lane. That looked like he was going to go for an engagement, maybe to catch Ghost. And even if it was someone like Ghost, you catch off. There's a pretty easy kill for you and an easy objective such as the gold mine.
Because like, it's not only that PRZ has this item which is so impactful. Mr. Keiko is a tier 3 item ahead of Atfel due to the fact that Atfel's sitting on 2,300 gold. And Dark Ghost has that Broken Myth, which means that he can burst through the very much lack of shielding that Apple has. I love the objective rotation for these crystal sentries, but I think they need to do a little bit more. Perhaps this is it.
PRZ, he's looking for it. There's the Gauntlet, comes down.
Oh, wow.
To Aeon, and Apfel was stunned. There's the Netherform detonation on the backline. The Termination Protocol explodes, and that says Dark goes very low, but they already take a casualty. Ghost is going to fall, and Aeon jumps in straight to the fray, but Dark Ghost is going to escape with the Vanguard, and now Apfel is going to go.
Whoa!
Mr. Keiko finds himself a triple kill. Team Queso with the ace. That's the trigger they needed to pull. Bang, bang, bang. They're all dead.
20 breaking point stacks on Mr. K Cool, double Tyrant's Monocle breaking point. PRZ with the Gauntlet plays, they get turrets, they get crystal sentries, they get gold miners. The gold lead has swung so heavily to Team Queso here, Jaws. They are up by a whole 5,000 gold at this 13-minute mark. Effectively, 2 tier 3 items ahead of Calamity Reborn. That is a massive gold lead heading into this 13-minute mark because they're only 2 minutes away from the Kraken spling. They're only 2 minutes away from a potential team fight that solidifies their win here, and the potential 5th game could come through for the Stinky Cheese squad. There were holes in their strategy, Jaws. It seemed like the mold was distasteful for Team Queso, but perhaps it was the extra flavoring they needed in this series.
Oh god. How do you even follow that as a sentence? I don't know. Well, Team Queso are going to follow that up with a Crystal Sentry, and that's going to get eliminated as well. That trigger that they needed to pull has successfully been blown apart. Leon coming in with the Termination Protocol lands it.
Oh no!
PRC is going to fall as well, and this game just turned on its head as Calamity Reborn find the perfect engagement. Dark Ghost is going to be able to escape with that Troublemaker in a second, but wow, what a turnaround for Calamity.
Team Queso, too big in their boots there, Jaws. Didn't have the Gauntlet offline. It was still on cooldown. Of course, the Echo, very long cooldown, 2.10 when used with big abilities like Gauntlet, especially level 1 abilities like Gauntlet that has the longest cooldown at that stage. And yeah, they just disrespected Calamity Reborn, who now have those monocles, that now have the ability to escape. DC with the Crucible. There's a reflex block on Apfel as well to stop up Atlases, and yeah, they just completely disrespected Calamity Reborn. It is a team fight win for Calamity Reborn. It is a Crystal Sentry elimination as well, though, which means these jungle team fights can be advantageous still for Queso. The only problem is they're up against a Lance, and as soon as that Echo comes online, I fear that fighting in the jungle is just not good against Lance. It's not good against Alpha either. Realistically, it's not good against Fox. You've got 3 heroes that love fighting in tight corridors, and your composition doesn't really benefit from that. Sky single target damage with her auto attacks, Reza single target damage with his burst on the fire starter. The only person who I guess is okay with it is the Arden, so don't fight in the jungle. It's nice that you've eliminated the Crystal Sentry, but it's not the place you want to fight. What it does allow for Team Queso to do is kind of move freely through the map. They're not going to be in trouble due to any Crystal Sentries. However, we're at this Kraken spawning moment, and there's still a 4,000 gold lead. Infusions have just been repurchased for Team Queso, and we got Infusions expiring on Aeon. Now's a great time to find a team fight. Echo's ready, Gauntlet's ready. Pull the trigger.
What they need to do, Mr. Keiko's got 4 damaging items as well. Breaking Point, Tornado Tribble, and double Monocle on board and online. Mr. Keiko looking to rumble, but so is Apfel as well. He's got a Breaking Point and double Monocle, and that will rip through Mr. Keiko if he can get his hands on him with very little armor on his side. Now it is up to Calamity Reborn here to fight in the jungle where they see fit. However, Ghost rolls over and does have to force his boots there. So Team Queso already showing them that they are a force to be reckoned with, and especially with Mr. Keiko and Dark Ghost at the position they are in. And I mean, pushed this far up as well because no Crystal Sentry is there in a very good situation right now. And in that last team fight, Doughty, like you were saying, if you fight an Alpha in amongst the jungle, she had a 3-man Prive Directive into a 3-man Termination Protocol. Your team's good as dead, no matter how much defenses you buy. Termination Protocol is available to Aeon. They're going to find Mr. Keiko. He does Surrey Strike away. Netherform detonation on the back line, but Aeon's going to be able to follow him up. There's the explosion and there's the kill. Aeon pops into the reboot, but the fight is already as good as done. Apfel is chasing PRZ, and Calamity Reborn are not done quite yet. Dowsy, they find a near enough ace, and they're going to take the Kraken as well.
Yeah, once more fighting in a tight-ish area. Mr. Keiko has not got a reflex block. He fears Apfel's crit. Means he's gone towards armor. That is potentially a disastrous move, I think, against a Lance. If you need to fight in corridors, you need to have a reflex block. You also don't want to get attack speed slowed by the Atlas Eva, so I'm a bit fearful for Mr. Keiko. And I think with good reason we've seen that Ghost can just style on him, and if he stuns up Mr. Keiko, then it makes Aeon's life so good. Where was the second gauntlet from PRZ? No Echo came out there. I guess it's going to be available for this next team fight around the Kraken. It could be pretty impactful. The one thing that we always have to respect from this Skye with this crit build is that she has the best objective control, pretty much second to a Kestrel. She will tear through objectives. This Kraken goes down very quickly, turrets go down very quickly, so Queso can take a lot of the map in an ace, in a heartbeat. But they need to get that ace, and so far they've been looking slightly lackluster.
Yeah, Apfel actually took a lot of turret damage there. He did step forward and took aggro. Nice Githy and all into the Impale actually onto PRZ.
Oh, no.
He's only just got the gauntlet available as well. The first one comes out, but they're all already inside it. Second one to segregate, but it doesn't matter. They trade 1 for 1, and Aeon goes in with a core charge to take away Mr. Keiko's life, and now it is Dark Ghost. 1v2 against Ghost and Aeon to actually do something, and with a Kraken to deal with as well.
Jaws.
A Gauntlet, Githy and wall, and that might just be all said and done. Their base is going to get opened up.
I was just praising Skye's objective damage. Let's talk about one of the heroes that has the worst. It's Reza. He just doesn't do anything to the Kraken. Dark Ghost, okay, what are you going to do? You're going to auto-attack it? Oh, the ult? Okay, that's a bit of burst damage. Oh. I think the turret's doing more damage to the Kraken at the moment, Jaws. So, you know, I think this is actually a little bit of a mistake from Aeon and Ghost. They could have taken this turret, but Kraken might go down as the turret does as well, so perhaps it is whatever's. Right now, Calamity Reborn are doing so well, and Apfel is so brave on this Fox. He is frontlining so often. You mentioned that he took millions of turret shots, Jaws. Well, what he also did during that period was stack up a breaking point and maintain those stacks. When that teamfight broke out underneath the choke point turret, he had 20 breaking point stacks, and Mr. Keiko had only just started stacking his breaking point. And that really turned the tide of the fight, because PRZ, who had already gone low due to the fantastic impales from Ghost, was basically unable to have any impact in the team fight, and Mr. Keiko just got melted by both Aeon and Resonance Bounces auto attacks from Apfel. Calamity Reborn are controlling this team fight, and Team Queso have thrown away such a massive advantage in this game. Disrespect Calamity Reborn, you just can't do that in these promotion matches. Right now, perhaps the Stinky Cheese squad are starting to melt under the pressure.
Well, now they've got cooldowns, Dowsy. They need to use them. There's the Gauntlet comes out, but he's just going to get Githy and Wood away, so they can't touch Apfel. But Dark Ghost finds his way onto the back line. Finally managed to find him. There's the Termination Protocol activated, but Prime Directive ends up missing. Keiko is still kiting back here, and that goes to Aeon straight into the Infinite Reboot. He finds a bit of damage onto Keiko. Termination Protocol not available, and the Prime Directive ends up going wide as well. They end up killing the Alpha, and Team Queso have found the ace.
That's it, it's GG. This is game. Queso have the buffed up winning wave. They have a Skye who's just going to chunk these turrets. And Mr. Keiko bought shielding. He recognized the Metal Jacket was bad. It also means the Bonesaw and Apfel's inventory becomes slightly less effective. The shielding allows him to survive against the Alpha, and Queso do it on just a single gauntlet. We're going to game 5.
They took the fight where it was possible. Aeon couldn't touch Mr. Keiko. Apfel can barely do it now. The crystal's going to explode, and that'll be game 5 on the board now for a spot in the VG8.
Basically, what happened there was Mr. Keiko, PRZ, Dark Ghost opened up the refrigerator. They pulled out their block of cheese Jaws. They looked at the expiry date and said, we're still good to go. Game 5 is on the horizon, and I cannot wait, Jaws. We'll have to see if this Stinky Cheese team, the Spanish Armada, can break their way into the Vainglory8.
What a fantastic game played by Mr. Keiko as well. Consistently moving in these team fights, Dowsy. It's very hard to even lock him down. You see him duck, dip, dive and dodging from Aeon, and we put it on Aeon as well to get on the back line and kill Mr. Keiko. But if Mr. Keiko uses the Surrey Strike correctly and is able to just move around, he is going to be the one to carry the team fights, and that is exactly what his score reflects. We're going to jump over to the desk though, as game 5 is going to come up very soon.
All right, we are going to game 5, ladies and gentlemen. Queso managed to take this one in the end, but once again, a long, drawn-out, incredibly close game that is decided by these late-game team fights. This has absolutely been the theme of this series. These two teams seem absolutely even when it comes to kind of pegging them on the board.
Yeah, and I mean, evidence of that is the fact that we're going to a game 5. Like, this is the first game 5 that we have seen of these challenge battles. So very impressive stuff coming out from both teams, fighting tooth and nail to try and get this spot in the Vainglory8.
Absolutely. This is everything for these two teams, especially Queso, who are yet to make it to into the Vainglory8, whereas we have Calamity Reborn. They've been knocked into the challenge battles and they are looking to redeem themselves. Let's take a look at some of the moments from that game, starting at 11 minutes, where Queso managed to take charge of this fight.
Yeah, and this whole game was kind of just so back and forth. It was just all about who kind of drew the first blood in these fights that seemed to be the ones that went on to win those fights. And the concern I had from this early game was, will the Alpha be able to get a large enough lead to be able to take over games? And unfortunately, just didn't get a large enough lead through the early game. And so when it came to the late game, all of the attention of the side of Queso went onto the Vox. I mean, Vox had a great game. Abfel did a phenomenal job, but unfortunately, they just didn't have enough damage combined between them consistently to stick the damage, to make the damage stick on their targets.
Yeah, and that's something we often see, is just not quite being able to finish those targets off. There is a lot of sustain in Vainglory, but let's take a look at the next clips, because we just saw Queso winning a fight there, but just to kind of show an example, it was Calamity that got the next couple of clips. These are a couple of double kills that came through for them.
Yeah, and again, it's just when they were able to get the big burst damage onto multiple targets, they were able to just mow them down, really. It was very, very strong play from both sides on the fold. This wasn't a game that was, lopsided in any sense of the word. But unfortunately for the side of Calamity, despite them able to find a few fights, able to get some solid pushing done off the back of those fights, they just couldn't find the final fight that they needed to close out the game. And I feel like that's kind of almost becoming a common trend with this series. There's been, I think, maybe one of the games where I can confidently say, like, one team just outright won the late game, whereas the rest of the games have been just back and forth, and it all came down to one skirmish or one fight in the late game that happened to just swing things.
Absolutely, and we do have the final fight in this one where Queso managed to finish things off and even up this series, and we can have a glance over at this one because this was so even. Still just 3k gold difference between the two teams at the start of this fight.
I like the idea there to use the Githian Wall to knock back the gauntlet coming out from PRZ, but unfortunately it completely isolated Abfel. And you can see with his build, if he gets isolated, especially by the Sky, he just gets taken down so quickly. And once Abfel is out of the fight, there's nothing left for the side of Calamity Reborn to finish off these team fights. So just an excellent job in terms of the positional awareness of Mr. K-Cool to identify that he could isolate Abfel and just charge on through and get that kill.
Absolutely, and super convenient as well that fight was over on that half of the map. So once they get that ace, once they finish off the players, they can push straight onto those objectives and finish the game. Had they been a little bit further across the map, maybe they wouldn't have had time to actually finish things off. Maybe it would have been a Kraken push, and we could have had another fight on the board. But it's going to be Queso evening things up. So we are going to our first game 5 of the challenge battles. Queso against Calamity Reborn. These two teams are evenly matched, it seems. Let's talk about the draft as we head into the 5th, the decider between these two. What needs to change here? The Alpha felt strong, but it didn't manage to win out the game.
Again, the draft is not the issue between these two teams. Their drafts, all 4 games previously, have been strong. They've both gotten very clear win conditions onto their side of the board. I just feel like you need to focus a little bit more on the late game. For both these teams, all of these games have gone late. All of them have gone into these brawls in the late game. And so if you focus on just having a very strong composition in the late game that you are comfortable with, that's going to be a key to victory, because neither team has shown that they can end a game prior to the 20-minute mark.
And you can see the focus there as well. You can see how the draft has developed across the course of this best of 5. Baron being banned away by Calamity Reborn. And to be honest, I kind of expect the Celeste ban to come out here when we get to the second round of bans. I can't believe first series of the day, not only are we going to full 30-minute games here, we're also going to a game 5. These guys do not want to play another series. They want to qualify for the Vainglory8 right now.
Yeah, and not only that, but you got to figure the team that doesn't qualify for the Vainglory8 here, they just played 5 games and have to go into another best-of-5 series immediately after. That is going to be grueling. But we are going to get our first Grace pick from the side of Queso here. And again, it's this ban away the Lyra, allow the enemy team to pick Arden, and get something else on your side that you are comfortable with. And Grace going into the late game, that is a very, very strong late game pick.
It certainly is. Grace, an incredibly powerful captain, and just offers some of the sustain that a Lyra would, but obviously with Lyra taken off the board, it's a good second option there. Crawl has been banned as well, which could lead towards something like a Ride pick, maybe something along the sustain lines, maybe even a Rona, but we'll have to see where this one goes as Calamity deciding that exact conversation themselves right now on what to ban next.
Yeah, and obviously when you have the Grace there, the Blackfeather becomes a concern because he's so strong with her, but now with Blackfeather banned, there's going to be the Celeste coming through, which had been banned in previous games. Finally is allowed through, but it's Queso that take it. They were the ones that had been banning it previously. So, again, brings up the question of, were they banning it because they didn't want someone on Calamity to get it? Or were they banning it because they just feel like it is an incredibly strong pick, and now that they have the opportunity to get it for themselves, they're more than happy to grab it? We'll have to see as we get into this game, but without the Blackfeather there, what's the answer for Calamity going to be is the question.
That is going to be the question. Blackfeather, as you say, taken off the board, but other assassins can still do the job. Vox will be the pick for the lane phase, and obviously can do a good job of dodging away from the skill shots coming out from a Celeste. And I'm curious to see what this jungle will be. I feel like you need to have an aggressive jungle here. It's going to be the Fortress. So once you've got an item or two under your belt, definitely can put on the pressure as a Fortress.
Yeah, a lot of aggression come out. And it's also the Fortress Vox that we've seen Cloud9 run a bunch of times throughout this season. We've been wondering, as we've been seeing Fortress here and there throughout the challenge battles, if teams were going to run it as a jungler. It had been as a captain thus far this weekend. Now it's going to be coming out in the jungle. A Batiste on the side of Queso to match up against it. Again, you looking at these compositions, I don't really feel like there's one that is a clear-cut winner. There's also the fact that Queso have a little bit of flexibility here. They can still run this weapon Grace that we've seen a lot of teams do and put the Batiste as a captain, or just run a double crystal composition. So it's going to be interesting to see where they decide to put everyone on the side of Queso, but there's still a lot of power and a lot of strength coming out from the side of Calamity Reborn as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of strength on both of these compositions. I'm curious to see if this will be a double CP composition. Obviously, a huge amount of CC on that side, so maybe that can work to their advantage, but definitely a lot of work cut out for both these teams. These have been huge games coming on in this series. We're going to the full best of 5 here. Both these teams going to be exhausted coming on into this one, and this is going to be a lot down to who can hold their own better at this stage and keep the mental game strong coming on in. It's time to get on into the game, though. It's time to decide who's going to the Vainglory8. Hashtag Vainglory8. Let's make sure you let everyone know what's going on here today. It's time to have our decider between Calamity Reborn and Team Queso as we head into game number 5.
Wrong. Vainglory8 on the line. Calamity Reborn versus Team Queso. Game number 5. What couldn't be a better way, honestly, Dowsy, to actually end this series than going straight to this one and seeing a Celeste for the first time in the series.
Yeah, absolutely. Celeste has come through. It's a hotly contested pick in this series due to the fact that Apfel is very, very good at these Crystal Power laners. But hey, so is Mr. K-Cool. It's something that he was very dominant on during the summer season of the challenge battles. And realistically, Team Queso had to take down the spring and autumn champions if they wanted to get into the Vainglory8 in spring. That's how close they were. They had to defeat G2, but hey, that's a team that realistically you aren't meant to beat here in Europe. They are truly one of the top league European teams. And so now Team Queso, with this best of 5, breaking it all the way, everyone must be feeling the stress and the fatigue that this series has brought onto them, but there is that extra tingling at the back of their minds that if you were to lose this best of 5, it would have been a very
Aeon's
much
gonna
expensive.
go down if he's not careful,
dear.
and Ordain will come through. This could be first blood to Team Queso in game number 5, it is, and it goes on to PRZ.
Oh dear. Sorry, Jaws. I've learned too much from my good friend Scoundrel, and I went on one of my monologues, but hey, this matchup here, the Batiste into Fortress is actually a pretty strong matchup for Batiste due to the fact that Fortress is very weak. He is going to come back in here, but I think this is a fool's errand.
Oh, nice Holy Nova. Ordain's going to come through as well. Dark Ghost going to be able to kite back. The stun doesn't quite go down as the Ordain does wear off in the end, and Ghost takes that absolute hammering from the side coming out from the Batiste, and they will be able to just back off with while they were licking their wounds.
Yeah, no, that's a very dangerous game to make. As you can see, Atful is now rotating towards the backs of Team Queso. And it is going to be Mr. Keiko securing the camps as he goes. Atful is now caught out. They can round the side into a Grace. Where do you go? Nowhere.
Absolutely not. Is that going to be a double kill for the captain? If he can get away,
okay.
Just manage to use the... No, it's all right. He's got it. He's got the zoom.
That was a slightly bit of a misplay, I guess, from PRZ. I guess he figured he could kill him with the benediction, but the flask got popped just at the last second. Jaws kept him alive. The Holy Nova, he didn't want to use it because if he sidestepped it, then perhaps he just wasted too much time. Either way, it was a difficult situation, and PRZ unfortunately wasn't able to make the kill connect. Atful does get away with his life, but nothing is lost for Team Queso at this point. Team is just seemingly getting better and better as this series progresses.
Yeah, well, that flask pop is actually forcing him underneath that turret. Aeon and Ghost are going to come in there. There's the Holy Nova, does land onto the Wolf, so does that core collapse. He's going to have to be super careful when he matches up against Mr. K. Cool, but no energy on the Celeste, meaning she can't output that much damage. Dark Ghost is going to rotate towards the lane, though, and PRZ just uses Benediction underneath the turret. Why not at this point? Just add insult to injury, and they are going to be able to chunk this turret for all it's worth as well.
Yeah, they've got a really good range comp here. They are actually going towards the double crystal power. I was kind of not mentioning it just yet because we've seen a bit of weapon power Batiste in the VGL Challenger series before, Jaws. So I held my tongue just in case. But it is going to be double crystal power, which means that itemization is pretty simple for the side of Calamity Reborn. They get themselves Aegises. In fact, Aeon on this fortress could even go towards a fountain of his own. This is an interesting composition we've seen before. You take the fortress, and then you build Tension Bow, and then you build Aftershock, and then you build double captain items, and you basically hyper carry the Vox, get 4 damage items on the Vox, and just run away with it. So I'll be interested to see if this is something that Calamity Reborn decide to do on this update. Tension Bow isn't as strong as it used to be when that was slightly more popular due to the fact that everyone has more health. There was a buff to kind of bring it back in line, but I still feel it is slightly lackluster if you don't have high burst damage values on your kit. Fortress, though, doesn't lack of that, so he can definitely make it work here. We'll have to see whether or not Team Queso with their double crystal power will be able to weather the storm.
Well, they're weathering this right now. They're weathering that turret down. Core collapse on the turret to get a bit of extra damage. Mr. K. Cool taking a chunk out of Dark Ghost, to Ghost as well. Bad Mojo not quite finishing the turret off, but that'll be one of the quickest turret takes in the game, in fact. That was the quickest first blood we had as well in this series. Both these teams are on edge, like you were mentioning earlier. Tensions are definitely running high. Fell diving in, though. PRZ and Mr. K. Cool taking a fair chunk of damage, but there's Aeon finishing his Tension Bow as his first item.
Tension Bow does come through. We'll see if he goes in Aftershock just to kind of provide a bit of crystal power damage, provide that double damage threat, the on-hit Fortress build that we've seen come out before. I do suspect this is going to be a composition that kind of Mouse made popular in the Vainglory8, which was that Tension Bow, Aftershock, Fountain, Crucible, War Treads, Jungle Fortress, and it provides so much utility for the team. You get to all in the Celeste, which is what you want to do, but then also have double Fountain, double Crucible.
Oof. That's an engagement and a half. Wait for it, and the wolves were popped. Core Collapse doesn't quite land, but a nice Ordain does standing up Aeon for the time being. Nova lands on Ghost as well to boot, and that'll be a few mad mojos flying away, and with Mr. K-Call as well with his Heliogenesis. Not quite reaching level 8, but he's still packing a punch. Ordain onto Apfel. He's going to get stunned, but he does dash backwards and uses that flask for the sustain. And now Ghost is taking a large beating as well. Team Queso really want to just force Calamity out of this, and that's 2 big ultimates actually used there as well.
Yeah, really big ultimates used, Jaws, like you mentioned, and this turret probably going to fall as we speak. Shield drops, 1 Heliogenesis will do the trick. And there it is, Bob to your uncle. Now, can they find anything else? I don't think they want to dive too deeply, but maybe they go for it.
Well, maybe they go for it on Ghost, who is going fairly low, but he's got the flask to back him up, does he? Can't forget the shielding from the flask, I know I always do. Core Collapse doesn't quite land on Apfel either, but that first turret take around 7 minutes into the game. Team Queso making a stand.
Yeah, they are, and look at that. Dive damage just doing so much poke. Celeste is really good into Vox, Jaws. There's a massive range disadvantage that comes out, especially when that Heliogenesis is overdriven, and Mr. K-Cool is just a jungle rotation away from it. I'm sure he joins Dark Ghost now at the backs just to get a bit of extra gold income due to everyone backing. He doesn't need to go straight to lane. Perhaps he won't join him there for the experience. Nope, there he goes. Of course he is. Why wouldn't he? It's free gold, free experience, and a level 8, which is so impactful for this Celeste here. He's got himself the Eve of Harvest and Broken Myth. Actually very lackluster in damage, that build, but I'm sure he pulls a Shatterglass or Dragon's Eye out next. Here comes an engage.
That's Heliogenesis onto Apfel. Was he forced to pot the boots? Not quite yet. Did Sonic zoom and had a Vanguard with him as well. But that Dark Ghost moving forward with those bad mojos does manage to find a stun on him as well. This disadvantage in terms of range, Dazzy, really coming into play now, like you said, with Mr. K-Call overdriving those Heliogenesis. Dazzy misses the Holy Nova, but that's not the target they want. They want this turret, which is already down to about half HP.
Yeah, and the Heliogenesis are just going to really start to hack, what am I trying to say? Stack up, there we go, against the turret there and burst it down when they go supernova. You have to remember though, with a double crystal power composition, your damage source is all the same. There is going to be very little weapon power damage coming out. PLZ, I guess, could build a Tension Bow. Grace has pretty high base values, so the Tension Bow could just like force a bit of threat, but I don't think that's something that Ozzy is going to be too interested in doing this game. And so it's very more likely that Mr. K-Cool, because he's got that Broken Myth early, he's trying to pierce the shielding. Broken Myth is actually really effective on this update against high shielding, just due to the fact that it's got 30% pierce. Dark Ghost, though, has to get a Clockwork before he gets a Broken Myth, and so that kind of forces him to build it fairly late. Great catch.
Big Ordain, yeah, bad mojo hitting him for 500 damage as well. So it's surprising when you see them when they're in power, Dazzy, how much damage they can do, and they are really starting to stack up as he's got that Shatterglass working towards that Clockwork. Also, there's the wolf. They're going to get popped. This is coming in as well, and Ordain will stop Aeon in his tracks. However, Ghost has the gauntlet, but when does he use it? When does he pull that trigger? Apfel's fairly low. Aeon doesn't have the attack of the pack anymore. They're in dire straits trying to defend this turret, but they need to be able to pull the trigger, and they need to be able to pull the trigger fast.
Yeah, so they do. This turret's going to fall here with that Supernova. Team Queso can just disengage. They don't have to push too deep, but they are continuing their poking game because they can. Because they've got such a huge rage disadvantage, and because of the fact Aeon has prioritized so much shielding, he is just doing nothing for the team as far as damage is concerned. There's that Aftershock, super necessary. Now they have that on-hit Fortress effect. They're not going to get anything out of it. Great back puns out of PRZ. They're going to continue chasing. Gauntlet comes out.
There's the gauntlet, yeah, it does land and actually stun Dark Ghost. Core Clap goes a little bit wide, wait for it, came out, but that fearsome shade was beautiful coming through from a Dark Ghost, and that Solar Storm was even better, Dowsy. Ghost, last member alive in this current team fight, or at least trying to be, or sorry, Apfel, Mr. Keiko was the last one. He was the only one around. PRZ was nowhere to be found. Captain's never there when you need him, apparently. Aeon and Ghost now backing off. Mr. Keiko getting the rotation here, trying to get some more poke damage down. There goes the Holy Nova, and the Solar Storm even will go off, and Aeon will go fairly low. Heliogenesis really starting to stack up from Mr. Keiko, and they're even going to take a Crystal Sentry.
Yeah, Crystal Sentry does go over to Team Queso in a 2 versus 3. Team Queso comes out ahead due to the fact that they were able to get that Crystal Sentry, and this is a gold lead they're generating that is very difficult for Calamity Reborn to weather as we speak, Jaws. The whole organization, team, and fans of Team Queso are currently asking the question, will this Vainglory8 spot be mine? Right now, they're getting closer and closer to their dream of Vainglory8, but there is still a long road to walk. Double crystal power compositions do start to teeter once those Aegises are built, and there's the first coming through for Atful. Aeon, very likely to prioritize his next, but if Team Queso can continue pressuring this game, they can look to get such gold advantages that they are so far ahead of Calamity Reborn that the crystal power composition doesn't even become a problem.
That's a big gold miner take as well from Team Queso. That nets them an extra 5,000 on the chart, or at least they're 5,000, not 5,000 extra from the gold miner. That'd be ridiculous, Dowsy, but they are 5,000 ahead now of Calamity Reborn, who have rotated towards this jungle shop, and in fact an infusion has been picked up for Atfel here, signaling maybe he wants to fight, and a pair of war treads for PRZ as well. Ghost isn't really nowhere near his Echo at the moment, has only got that Crucible and the Fountain. Crucible rather necessary, however, for that Fearsome Shade and the core collapses alike. But that Gauntlet hasn't been used to the greatest of effects thus far. They've just been pushed in time and time again. The poking coming out from Team Queso is way too much for them to deal with. Ghost moving his way in. Only Nova only actually gets the walls. The wall treads get popped. Beautiful core collapse, but it's actually going to get blocked up by Aeon. A nice Gauntlet comes down, and Mr. K Cool goes fairly low, but is healed up already. Aeon falls, and now is Atfel in the 1v2. Mr. K Cool is going to join them. Only Nova blocked out by the reflex block. Can he do anything more? It's too much to sustain on Dark Ghost. Those bad mojos are hitting multiple people now. There is the ultimate from Mr. K Cool, signaling the end of Atfel. Ghost is going to fall as well, and that is an ace for Queso.
That fight was so explosive. Debris went everywhere. This cheese is just becoming too much for Calamity Reborn to handle, and with a huge buffed up minion wave, they are gonna find themselves this choke point turret. Everything is falling apart for Calamity Reborn. Queso have just generated too much of a gold lead, and at this 14-minute mark, the Crystal Sentry just giving them even more. It seems impossible for Calamity to come back. It was a good setup. They got on top of the Celeste, but they weren't able to execute. The Gauntlet wasn't enough, and just this chase down Atful couldn't handle the damage and sustain coming out of this Batiste. Solar Storm snipes on through, and it just left Ghost left to kind of waddle away, and he wasn't able to do so. Aces for Queso, making things pretty interesting here, and Vainglory8 positions are getting closer and closer.
And they open up the gold in again, securing themselves an extra 1,000 gold. That gold mine is fairly full as well. You can imagine they're going to want to go for it. Right now, there is no way it seems that Calamity can actually get in these fights. But with those war treads being picked up from Ghost, maybe that is their ticket in to actually kill Keiko. My only worry here is Dowsy, that PRZ has got an Echo, and he's going to be able to double heal Mr. Keiko or Dark Ghost, depending who actually goes low in the fights. Those are humongous in securing them teamfight wins, and I've got a feeling Ghost is a little bit too far behind at this point in his captain build, or maybe the itemization's not really there for him to actually make any meaningful effort. The wolves are going to get unleashed, but Ghost is already low. That's a nice Fearsome Shade onto 2 people, sends them all running. Atfel still alive in this fight, away for his Scientist 3. The Gauntlet comes out as well, and that's going to stun Dark Ghost, but Mr. Keiko still alive in this fight. 9 stacks as well on the Dragon's Eye, just means he ripped through the team, and Ordain lands on Atfel. He does get stunned up. Now he's trying to make the great escape. Fearsome Shade from downtown doesn't quite land, and he does trigger the Scout Trap also, but with 15 minutes on the clock and Team Queso taking that teamfight victory, the Kraken is only next.
Team Queso are so good at kiting back here, Jaws, and it just means that there is no damage potential coming out of the side of Calamity Reborn. Aeon with his on-hit build, if he gets blocked up or stunned or just stopped up, his damage source is eliminated. And Apfel has not hit a point on this box where he can hyper carry. That was always the plan, but his build doesn't say hyper carry just yet. Now we get that breaking point online. It's so essential for him to be stacking up in these team fights if he's going to have a chance of taking down the Batiste, who's just been holding him at bay, but it almost seems too late. The Kraken's unleashed Jaws, and they're pushing into the base. Only 2 Vein Crystal turrets separate them and the Vainglory8.
And you saw how quickly they were taking the turrets earlier, and oh boy, they're going to be able to take them a lot quicker now. Shatterglass, Clockwork, Mr. Keiko's fully stacked out and decorated in items. And now it is Calamity Reborn's final hope, their final stand on these turrets. They're going down very quickly as this Kraken and Dark Ghost are pummeling them. Maybe Infusion buys here. They're going to go in with the Gauntlet. That's a War Treads pop to Mr. Keiko. He's out of the fight completely. He's in a 1v1 versus Apfel. The Fearsome Shade was good. The heals are coming out from PRC as well to keep them alive. But Mr. Keiko, it wasn't quite enough. But Dark Ghost manages to secure the kill on Apfel, the main carry. And now it's only Aeon and Ghost to just clean up the pieces, or at least try to. Dark Ghost is just buying time for that Kraken, who is now on the crystal. It is now or never. Team Queso, they just need to survive, and they managed to take out the Wolf. Ghost is the only one left alive, and Team Queso, they're going to graduate to the VG8. They are no longer a Baby Bell-sized cheese dowsy. They are a pure, mature cheddar.
Absolutely. Over this season, the team has matured into such a formidable roster. They took down Echo Fox at the Unified Live Championships in summer, and here in autumn, they have joined the Vainglory8. Like my friends said, the wise words of the Eurythmics: sweet dreams are made of cheese, and who am I to disagree? Jaws, they've done it. Team Queso have joined the European Vainglory8.
And what a banner to do it under as well. Team Queso, they've done a fantastic job on the VGL, and I can't break down this game anymore. I need more cheese puns over on the desk.
I don't have a response to that level of cheese punnery, but Queso have done it in a full best of 5. They have made it into the Vainglory. Massive congratulations to Queso, and in a dominant victory as well. After the entire series was so close between these two teams, Queso come out with a 17-minute victory and show that they are absolutely deserving of being a Vainglory 8 team.
Yeah, you could say this was a really grating series.